Chapter 1671. War of Nations. This was a new term. However, for Yuqigong and Chang Yaojin, this was equivalent to opening a new door for them. Chang Chumo and the others originally wanted to come, but because of this matter, Wei Zhang and the others instructed them to send Li Chengqian off. After all, the lack of winter clothes in the army was only known to the officials and a few people in the imperial court. Once this matter was spread out, how could they not know how big of an uproar it would cause? Moreover, these people were famous for their big mouths. Who would dare to tell them such an important matter? The reason why Zhang Xian had come to look for Zhang Feng today was to ask Zhang Feng if there was a way to resolve the matter. After all, previously Zhang Feng said that he had a way to make more than 100 textile machines automatically weave cloth. At this moment, seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to be interested, they hurriedly sat up straight and asked, "Fengzi, what is this War of Nations?" Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Before asking this, I have to ask if you still remember the National Tussa?" National Tussa. How could they not know about this? They couldn't help but nod and say, "We remember." Zhang Feng heard and said, "Since you know about the National Tussa is the rivers and mountains of the country, which is also the fate of the country. And this War of Nations, as the name suggests, is a war between two countries. At this time, Xieli and Tuli launched an invasion at the same time. In fact, one of them is real and the other is just a test. At the beginning, when we were at the foot of the mountain, I told Lao Li that Tuli was going to the south. At this time, he chose this place to test us and ask for some money, food, and war horses from the Tang dynasty. After all, we made him anxious with a knife last time. At this time, the internal war of the Turks broke out. Plus, at this time, the Turks and the Indian army. Didn't you think of anything else?" Zhang Feng thought that they would be able to respond, but when he finished speaking, he saw that they were all smoking and staring at him. He couldn't help but sigh. He said, "The Turks have the most frequent contact with our Han people. But if you check the history, when did the Turks ever fight together with others? Never." When Zhang Feng said that, Yuqigong and Chang Yaojin couldn't help but gasp. "Fengzi, it really is as you said. The Turks have never worked with anyone. But that doesn't mean anything." Wei Zhang could not help but frown. But he had a different explanation. "Old Yu, Old Chen, the two of you should calm down. Fengzi is right. These 2 years, I've been paying more attention to the affairs of the Turks. The Turks are arrogant and eccentric, and they disdain fighting with others. They believe in the heavenly wolf. As for wolves, they are extremely unruly. Have you ever seen a pack of wolves hunting with a tiger?" After asking this question, Yuqigong and Chang Yaojin were even more confused. "You mean to say that the Turkic Khaganate and Indian alliance at this time means that he has a bigger plan?" But in the next moment, Wei Zhang refuted Chang Yaojin and Yuqigong's words. He said, "I think that they have reached a point where they can't do anything without external help. After all, as Fengzi said last time, we got a lot of cattle, sheep, and horses from the Turks. I even heard that most of the Turks don't have any cattle or sheep. They even exchanged their war horses for food. So, Fengzi is saying that the Turks and the Indians are working together to divert the crisis on their side?" Zhang Feng pointed at Wei Zhang and praised, Look at old Wei. It's good to read a lot. Look at him, he can understand this point easily." Yuqigong and Chang Yaojin's faces darkened when they heard that. They felt that he was laughing at them for being illiterate. Seeing this, Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly said, "Well, what I mean is, the Turks are doing this because they haven't completely solved their food shortage and they don't have enough war horses. However, they are jealous of the things that the Tang dynasty has now. Seeing that winter is coming, they have no choice but to start this war. And their purpose this time is not just to plunder. They want to go straight to the root of the problem. That is, their purpose is the vast Tang dynasty." What? In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. If that's the case, doesn't it mean that Tuli from the north is playing for real this time? At this time, the crown prince was guarding the border. Didn't it mean that the danger would be doubled? At the thought of this, their expressions changed abruptly. "Fengzi, is what you said true?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "How can it be false? Not only that, but Tufan, Tuyu, and Hungao will also be implicated because of this matter. Therefore, the current war in the north does not depend on when he will attack, but on when the heavens will allow him to attack. If the heavens are on his side, Tuli in the north will only return empty-handed this time. However, this also depends on the Crown Prince's situation at the border. Chapter 1672. Look at the situation of the Crown Prince guarding the border? How could they look at it? At this time, their expressions changed again. Even Wei Zhang was ready to go down the mountain immediately to stop the Crown Prince from guarding the border. Zhang Feng didn't know what was wrong with Wei Zhang. He hurriedly said, "Old Wei, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to stop the Crown Prince from guarding the border." At this time, the Crown Prince is taking the important military equipment of the Tang dynasty to Chotzi. If there is an accident on the way, won't there be a big problem? No, no, no. Sit down, sit down. Don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. Zhang Feng hurriedly pressed Wei Zhang down and said, "Old Wei, this is a matter of the imperial court. What are you anxious about?" Wei Zhang was stunned. Only then did he realize that he was careless. Fang Xianling hurriedly said, "Well, Old Wei is not worried about that. He is worried about the military equipment and cannons that the Crown Prince is personally escorting, as well as Lao Li's son. If these cannons fall into the hands of the Turks, then it will be dangerous." Zhang Feng waved his hand carelessly and said with a smile, "Do you think I'm stupid? I'll install the whole thing and then send it over?" Chang Yaojin couldn't help but pat Zhang Feng on the shoulder. In an instant, Zhang Feng's face suddenly turned pale. In this short moment, the house was almost destroyed. Chang Yaojin was so scared that he hurriedly put Zhang Feng on the rocking chair, patted his chest, and slit his neck. He couldn't wait to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Wei Zhang glared at Chang Yaojin angrily. He was about to go forward and argue with him when Zhang Feng finally calmed down. After a violent cough, many people finally woke up. They asked in confusion, "What happened just now? Why do I suddenly feel like the sky is falling?" When they heard this, they didn't know what to say. They could only laugh it off and avoid this matter. Then, Chang Yaojin hurriedly asked, "Feng Zi, at this time, if you don't let me go and save people, you should at least tell me your plan, right? We're old brothers. What's so hard to say? Don't you think you're asking for a beating?" Zhang Feng rubbed his aching shoulder. Took him a long time to recover. He stared at Chang Yaojin suspiciously. He seriously suspected that he had been plotted against by this person, but Zhang Feng had no evidence. In addition, Chang Yaojin was thick-skinned. At this moment, his face was not red nor was he panting. Zhang Feng could do nothing about it. He could only say, "Although those things were given to the merchants of the western regions to transport, I have already secretly placed them in the official salt team. Moreover, I have taken these things apart. Other than Li Gan, no one else knows how to assemble them. Otherwise, why would I let Li Gan go?" This time, Li Gan went to Chotzi for two reasons. On the one hand, he wanted to train. On the other hand, the most important thing was to show off our firearms and military command ability. This was something I fought hard for. This time, the Crown Prince went. This is also a good thing. After all, with a big head like him, no one will notice Li Gan. This way, it will be much easier to do things. If only that was the case. The key was that everyone here knew that the Crown Prince was Li Gan, and Li Gan was the Crown Prince. At this moment, Zhang Feng's words meant that there were interceptions along the way. Wei Zhang's face suddenly darkened. "Feng Zi, this is a serious matter. It is not something that only Li Gan can deal with. From what I heard, you mean that the Crown Prince's journey to the border is not peaceful." Zhang Feng nodded. "Of course. Who is the Crown Prince? He is the future of the Tang dynasty. Whoever can get his hands on him will practically own the west gate of the Tang dynasty." Hearing this, everyone's face suddenly changed. "Well, tell us, do you have any ideas?" "The Crown Prince. Once he and those cannons fall into the hands of the Turks, then how can the Tang dynasty be safe?" "Feng Zi, say something. Stop arguing. Let's see what Feng Zi has to say." Zhang Sun Wuji, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said loudly. After calming everyone down, he said, Feng Zi, this is a serious matter. If you have any plans, why don't you tell us? Zhang Feng shrugged and said, I really don't have any good ideas. This matter will depend on how Li Gan, the crown prince, and Niu Jijia handle it. I have already asked Tai Niu and the others to tell Niu Jijia about this matter. As for what happened on the road, it is actually a kind of trial. It will be of great help to the crown prince and Li Gan. Don't worry about it blindly. Instead of worrying about it blindly, why don't you think about how to deal with the Turks in the north, or think about what to eat to be safe later? After hearing Zhang Feng's words, although they were still a little worried, after all, this matter was of great importance. But seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to have prepared for it, if they said too much at this time, they would only expose their identities. They discussed. Then they temporarily suppressed all the thoughts in their hearts. After all, the 5,000 elites accompanying them and Niu Jinda were not to be trifled with. With so many people, unless the Turks came with several times more people, it was really impossible for them to stop the crown prince and the others. It was more reasonable. Among the things they brought, there was the indestructible long hair and the powerful crossbow that could be fired instantly. Once these things were used, although there was a risk of being exposed, the crown prince's safety was assured. Chapter 1673. And at this time, the armaments and other important things had been sent out in batches. It was too late to recall them now, and Chotzi City couldn't wait that long. At this time, although everyone was still worried, they could only observe quietly. After all, they knew Niu Jinda's ability. And these 5,000 elites were all wearing special bulletproof vests. As long as these people were there, the crown prince's comfort would not be a problem. Moreover, this was the Long Yu Dao of the Tang dynasty. Once the Turks entered the Tang dynasty, he would immediately send the message to all provinces and prefectures. In this case, what's wrong with the crown prince's comfort? Although they didn't know Zhang Feng had dismantled those armaments, if Zhang Feng said it was fine, then it should be fine. By the way, Old Wei, you just said Feng province. What's the situation in Feng province and Shang province now? Zhang Feng asked curiously. Wei Zhang took a deep breath and said, At this time, the weather in Feng province and Shang province is really cold, as you said. And I heard from Lord Zhangsun that Master Yuan Tiangang did divination in person, and it was confirmed that there will be snow in Feng province and Shang province soon. Perhaps this snow is the reason for their retreat? Hearing this, Zhang Feng's eyes flashed with a touch of shock. Yuan Tiangang, this awesome person in the Tang dynasty, was really awesome. Zhang Feng remembered that the legendary pushback diagram was a book that was banned from being circulated to foreign countries until he transmigrated in the future. And before his time travel, Zhang Feng remembered that this book was called a divine book in the Chinese department. It was not because of how gorgeous his writing was or how awesome his drawing was, but because of the things predicted in the pushback diagram. Of these matters, less than 7 had been analyzed. However, these 7 people had already been clearly arranged. What did this mean? This was a divine book that spanned thousands of years. This was the first year of the Tang dynasty. Not only did Yuan Tiangang predict Wu Zetian's ascension to the throne, but he also predicted Yang Guifei's rebellion and Ma Weipa's death. Just this alone was enough to shake the entire world, not to mention those unknown things. Previously, Zhang Feng had really forgotten about this person. However, after hearing Wei Zheng's words, the pushback painting and Li Chunfeng instantly occupied his mind. He hurriedly hooked his arm around Wei Zheng's neck and asked, Old Wei, I have a favor to ask. When can you arrange for me to meet Master Yuan? Wei Zheng felt a little strange. However, he was also looking forward to the meeting between the two. One was the most famous master of strange arts in the Tang dynasty, and the other was the most famous swindler in the Tang dynasty. What kind of sparks would erupt when these two people interacted? Although Wei Zheng was looking forward to it. However, this was not the time to talk about this. He said, If there is a chance in the future, I will tell the Lord Zhangsun about this. As for whether Master Yuan will meet you or not, it's hard to say. Seeing that there was hope, Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and said, Tell me, how did Master Yuan predict it? Zhang Feng was more curious. Although he knew that people in ancient times could predict the future from the orbits of the stars and some natural means, he still wanted to know what method Master Yuan used. Wei Zhang said, I have heard about this, and Master Yuan is best at finding incense and asking for directions. As for what method he used, I don't know. If you want to know, you will know when you meet Master Yuan. However, there is one thing I am sure of. Master Yuan also predicted that this time, the Turks in the north will definitely retreat because of this wind and snow. However, today the Lord Zhongsun came to us and told us a secret. Maybe the retreat mentioned by Master Yuan is not because of the snow, but because of the cold. At present, His Majesty has received a total of reports from Longyu, Yuzhou, and other stations. They are all about the issue of materials for the winter. I think this is not only a problem of the Tang dynasty, but also the key reason why Tuli appeared in Shang and Feng provinces at this time. This time, the purpose of our visit is to ask you about the war against Chotzi and Tuli in Feng province. Also, the issue of the military equipment. At this time, almost all of Liangzhou, Shazhou, Ganzhou, and other places have started to snow. However, almost all of our military equipment is from last year, as well as the equipment from summer and autumn. What do you think? Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little confused. Isn't this the matter of the Ministry of Works? Didn't they prepare for it? What does this have to do with me? Zhang Feng was instantly alert. It was definitely not a good thing to talk about this at this time. As expected, Wei Zhang sighed and said, Didn't we suffer from the plague of locusts this year? The leaves of the trees were all ruined. With this, all the mulberry trees are gone. Those who raise silkworms and plant hemp have almost no harvest this year. Say, even immortals can't do anything about this. I heard that His Majesty was furious in the court early this morning, but he had no choice. In the end, he ordered the Lord Zhongsun, the Ministry of Works, Duaji, and the Agriculture Temple to find a solution. Otherwise, these people will lose their heads. So, the Lord Zhongsun came to you and Lao Li agreed? That's why you came to me? At last, he asked with his eyes widened in disbelief. Although these people were sly old foxes, they really couldn't refute when their purpose was directly stated at this time. At this time, they even felt a little embarrassed. However, they really could not find a second person in this matter except for Zhang Feng. Therefore, at this time, Wei Zhang and Zhongsun Wuji cupped their hands and said, Feng, no way. This matter is not negotiable. Goodbye. I still have something to do. Bye. Chapter 1674. What a joke. If you were to say that there was cotton or something like that, then it would be fine. In this entire era, let alone cotton, Zhang Feng had never even seen the shadow of cotton before. During the Tang dynasty, the winter temperature was no different from that of the south in the modern era. The temperature was also warm and pleasant. Longjiudo, Tubo, Shazhou, Ganzhou, and other places were also vast oases. Only after leaving Yumen Pass would one see the boundless desert. However, this did not mean that he did not feel cold during the winter. Chang'an was not cold. However, the places where there were garrisons were almost always the most difficult places. The environment and temperature in these places were the worst. However, in this magical era, the thing to pass the winter was actually strange paper clothes. If someone told Zhang Feng in the modern era that people wore paper clothes during the winter in the Tang dynasty, Zhang Feng would not even think about it and hit that person in the face with his shoe. However, when he saw those things for real, he fell silent. In this stupid era, there were actually people who wore paper clothes. This paper was a special kind of paper. It was made from the bark of a spring tree. It was ground into cotton and then made into paper. This kind of paper was thick and could absorb heat and sweat. Most importantly, after processing, this kind of armor was made into clothing. It was really comfortable. At the very least, this thing was enough to keep one warm for a winter. However, the problem in making this thing was that his paper-making technique was not developed. Even if he asked Zhang Feng to make this thing with his paper-making technique, he would not be able to make 100 caddies in a day. Most importantly, this thing had to be steamed at high temperature and pasted to make clothes. This paper was not thin to begin with, so it had to be pasted with 30 layers of paste. If there were too few layers, it would break after a few times. If there were too many layers, it would be cumbersome. In this way, it would take almost 3 days to make a piece of clothing. Zhang Feng did not know how many garrisons there were in Longjiudo, but he knew that there were 100,000 soldiers in Chotzi City. 100,000 soldiers. Who knew how long it would take for him to make it? Wouldn't that be asking for his life? It would be strange if he could accept this job. He wasn't stupid. But once Zhang Feng left, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Seeing Zhang Feng slip away just like that, he did not know what to say. When Zhang Feng really went downstairs and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes, the few of them woke up. Zhang Sun Wuji couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng, who had disappeared from his sight, and asked, "Old Wei, what do you think we should do now?" "Old Wei, this matter depends on you and Old Sun. Otherwise, I'm really dead," Yu Qigong said with a sobbing tone. He really didn't know what to do about this. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have made a promise in front of the emperor today. Otherwise, she wouldn't have caused so much trouble. But now it was too late to say anything. Seeing this, Wei Zheng couldn't help but sigh. "I think we still have to consider this matter at length. Think about it, no one would dare to accept this mission. At least 100,000 armaments in a month. How is that possible? And you made a promise in front of the emperor. The emperor also made a decision in front of everyone. This matter is too hasty." Yu Qigong was about to cry. He hurriedly stopped Wei Zheng and said, "I know. Don't be sarcastic, okay? Let's talk about this first. What should we do? Don't ask who's to blame now." Hearing this, Du Ruhui narrowed his eyes and said, "Why don't we go and ask Mr. Huai for help?" Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up in an instant. Du Ruhui was right. At this time, going to the old scholar might be the right thing to do. As for Yu Shernan and the others, there might not be any hope. After all, Yu Shernan and the others had expressed their stance last time. From now on, Zhang Feng was not allowed to stir up trouble again. He had told them that at this time, if they went to Yu Shernan, wouldn't they be asking for trouble? At the thought of this, how could they sit still? They all went to look for the old scholar. On the other side, after Zhang Feng left the villa, his mind was filled with the matter of clothes, although he didn't care about what others thought. However, his family, the few Confucians on the mountain, the students, the craftsmen, and the people in Tonghui Fong all needed it. The people in Tonghui district and the craftsmen in the various workshops on the mountain worked every day to create today's White Deer College and the normal operation of the Daoshan market. These people were the ones who really needed them. Moreover, the average temperature on the mountain was at least 5 degrees lower than that below the mountain. At this time, it was indeed a little cold from morning to night. Zhang Feng was also considering the matter of winter clothing. However, thinking was just thinking. It was also troublesome to do it. If he really wanted to do it, it would be difficult. After all, it was really difficult to not have cotton. This was already the biggest problem in front of Zhang Feng. At least until now, Zhang Feng really didn't think of any useful way to replace cotton. Even cashmere and goose down, you must have a machine to make it, right? Although there were many of these things, there was no time. There was only a month until the new year. In such a short time, there were more than 100,000 people. Even if Zhang Feng sacrificed his life, he couldn't make so many cotton-padded clothes. Chapter 1675. What Zhang Feng was worried about was, it would end badly if they did that. How could they do it without anything? That was one thing. The main source of the problem was that the time was too short. Even if they used water wheels to make unmanned textiles, they could not make so much in such a short time. Even the large garment factories of the later generations could not do it. Not to mention now. It could be said that although there were many people in the Tang dynasty now, it was useless. This thing was not something that could be done with a large number of people. Most importantly, there was no cotton or other substitutes in this era. Even the best ones that Zhang Feng knew were sheepskin jackets, rubber thermal jackets, and paper jackets. Although Zhang Feng knew all of these, he knew that the best ones were sheepskin jackets, rubber thermal jackets, and paper jackets. But when he thought about the needs of hundreds of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people, Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. In this era, even if they added the cattle and sheep from Tubo and other countries, the Tang dynasty did not lack leather goods at this time, but It was difficult. Zhang Feng could not help but rub his forehead. Unknowingly, Zhang Feng had already arrived at the textile factory that was under construction. Once the textile factory was completed, the three major projects that Zhang Feng had mentioned were almost completed: the steel mill, the rubber factory, and the textile factory. But at this time, the textile factory was only a prototype. It was being built halfway up another mountain. Shao Mountain was divided into two mountains, and the whole Shao Mountain was like a gold ingot, sandwiched between the two mountains. On the mountain in the west, the forging workshop had been expanding all the way to the top of the mountain. And on the other side, it was the source of the water of the whole Shao Mountain, which was connected to the East Peak waterfall of Shao Mountain. It had almost become the main living area of Shao Mountain. The whole academy was built on the flat plain between the two mountains. At the foot of the mountain there was a paper factory, a rubber factory, a food factory, and so on. At this time, standing halfway up the East Peak, Zhang Feng looked down at everything at the foot of the mountain. He was in disbelief. A few months ago, this place was still a wasteland. Who would have thought that in less than half a year, this place would become like this? Moreover, it had become a place comparable to Chang'an City. Zhang Feng knew that he couldn't do all of this. After all, he really didn't have the ability. All of this was the result of everyone's hard work. Zhang Feng couldn't understand why these people followed him. He was just doing what he wanted to do. It could be said that he was doing everything according to his heart. However, he hadn't noticed it before. Only when he turned around and looked down did he realize that there were actually so many people gathered around him. Zhang Feng looked at all of this with a headache. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Originally, he just wanted to start a business without relying on this unreliable system. However, this business was still in its initial stage, and he already encountered so many troubles. How could this not give her a headache? Now, although he refused to make winter clothes for the 100,000 people, what about the people on the mountain? These people all needed to survive the winter. Moreover, the temperature on Mount Kuei was much lower than that of Chang'an City at the foot of the mountain because of its altitude. Although the temperature of Chang'an in this era was very pleasant, it was still very cold in this winter. The clothes for these thousands of people became his biggest headache at this time. After all, more than 3,000 students, more than 50 Confucian scholars, more than 300 people in charge of logistics in Tonghuifang, more than 1,000 craftsmen and Lao He. These people were all his old subordinates. However, at this time, a series of shouts pulled Zhang Feng back to reality from his thousands of thoughts. He saw that not far away, several craftsmen were cutting trees on the mountain. When a big tree not far from Zhang Feng fell down with a loud bang. Everyone also saw Zhang Feng, who was in a snow-white robe. Everyone was stunned at first, and then couldn't help but roar excitedly. "Dean! The Dean is here!" Along with the exclamation, Gan Ziyuan also hurried over with a stick in his hand. When he saw that it was really Zhang Feng, he was immediately wild with joy. "Dean, why are you here alone? You should have told me in advance." Gan Ziyuan. Zhang Feng was surprised. He hadn't seen him for a long time. At this time, Zhang Feng really didn't recognize him. After all, this time Gan Ziyuan was dressed a little shabby. Zhang Feng looked at Gan Ziyuan with some surprise, pointed at the wooden stick in his hand and asked, "Old Gan, what's wrong with you?" Gan Ziyuan heard, waved his hand and said with a smile, "Hey, you're talking about this. Isn't this for work? The weather is cold, so I came up the mountain to work and warm up. Let's go. I'll take you to the textile factory." Now the textile factory is amazing. While speaking, Gan Ziyuan pulled Zhang Feng in the direction of the textile factory. After Zhang Feng left, the people who went up the mountain were peeling the bark and arranging the wood. Zhang Feng looked at the red tree deeply, then looked at the thin clothes on Gan Ziyuan's body, and couldn't help but ask, "Old Gan, do the people who go up the mountain now wear such clothes?" Chapter 1676. Clothes again. This was the topic that Zhang Feng heard the most today. At this time, Zhang Feng was silent. Gan Ziyuan seemed to have noticed Zhang Feng's silence at this time and could not help but ask in surprise, "Dean, what's wrong with you?" Zhang Feng did not leave. Looking at the construction site that was bustling with activity not far away, He said, "Old Gon, tell me the truth. Are you all wearing unlined clothes?" Gon Ziyuan was stunned. He said indifferently, "We're the ones who put in the effort, so we can't wear thick clothes. Once we wear them, we won't be able to see anyone in less than 3 days." "Then you were peeling the bark just now to make clothes?" Zhang Feng interrupted Gon Ziyuan and said, "Old Gon, what are these people peeling the bark for?" In an instant, Gon Ziyuan was silent. Looking at Zhang Feng's strange expression, he began to falter. "Well, it's going to be Chinese New Year soon, and the construction site needs wood. We're thinking of getting some bark while we're cutting down trees and hiring people to make some clothes. After all, thanks to the dean, we've made a lot of money this year. So, my brothers wanted to buy some new clothes. I was worried, so I followed them. I didn't expect to run into the dean, but we definitely didn't delay the construction. I can guarantee this with my head." Zhang Feng's breathing could not help but become a little rapid. Looking at the craftsmen who were peeling the bark and the craftsmen who were curled up in the corner, Zhang Feng suddenly felt that he seemed to have failed. No wonder the old scholar and Yu Shernan advised him not to go out again and to stay in the academy and deal with the academy's affairs. Zhang Feng did not understand before, but now Zhang Feng finally understood. Things outside were a mess, and things at home were still a mess. What was there to do? There was simply no way to do it. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and pointed at the textile factory. "Old Gon, let me ask you, do you know what this place is used for?" Gon Ziyuan saw Zhang Feng's dignified look and didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly said, "I don't know, but I heard that it is a textile factory. It should be a weaving workshop. We have no right to ask the dean's decision. We only know how to do what we should do." Over the course of a few months, Zhang Ruochen had been in a daze. Gon Ziyuan could clearly feel the changes on the mountain. Among the people he brought here, as well as the people he called here before, almost every craftsman was paid 10 copper coins a day. No matter where they were, they would receive such a high salary. The most important thing was that every 3 to 5 days, they could go to the cafeteria and have a free meal when the students were teaching. There was plenty of wine and meat. Furthermore, he would pay his salary on time every month, and he would never be late. These were enough for a stone golem to fuse, right? They were the lowest of the low, but in this place they received the same treatment as the students. Sometimes the students even had to come here to work and work together with them. It was just like that. In this world, perhaps only White Deer College was like this. Zhang Feng's heart was slowly changing without him knowing. After a moment of silence, Zhang Feng said, "This is indeed a textile factory. In the future, it will be one of the largest textile factories in the Tang dynasty. Every day, there will be white cloth produced here, and thousands of clothes will be distributed from here. This is my purpose for setting up this textile factory." Gon Ziyuan didn't know whether Zhang Feng could do it or not. He also didn't know whether Zhang Feng's words, which they didn't even dare to dream of, would come true. However, they believed in Zhang Feng. They believed that Zhang Feng would definitely do it. However, what was the meaning of Zhang Feng's words? He didn't understand, so he could only nod. Zhang Feng didn't explain anything. He took a deep breath and said, "Old Gon, count the workers here. How many are there? Isn't it just winter clothes? If I can't even do this, my position as the dean will be over. Quickly count the number of people and send them to my courtyard." As he spoke, Zhang Feng left in a hurry. After Zhang Feng left, the craftsmen who had already noticed Zhang Feng quickly surrounded him and asked what the dean was doing here. Gon Ziyuan's mind was only filled with Zhang Feng's words. He took a deep breath and scolded, "What the hell are you all doing here? Can't you see that the dean is unhappy? The dean just told me that he's making clothes for you frozen ghosts. If you don't work hard, don't even think about it." Hearing this, all the craftsmen were in an uproar. "The dean is making winter clothes for us? Is this true? I told you that this is a textile factory. There's a shortage of winter clothes everywhere in the world. But where are we? This is White Deer College. It definitely won't happen here." Amidst the uproar, the craftsmen on the mountain were boiling. Winter clothes, even the cheapest paper clothes, cost 100 copper coins. Even they couldn't bear to buy it, let alone so many people at home. Now, the dean actually said that he was going to give them. What was this? This was truly a joyous occasion. Chapter 1677. Lantian County had been the western gate of Chang, and since ancient times. It was also where the Guanyi Road and Shannon Road intersected. At this moment, a group of youths were waiting in boredom at the foot of an ancient tree that was at least 100 years old. On the side, the horses were leisurely gnawing on the small amount of sheep beard grass on the ground. At this moment, all of a sudden, the horses seemed to be startled. They snorted in a panic, pricked up their ears, and spun around in circles. When the youths saw this, they were shocked and sat up straight. These youths were wearing the uniform of White Deer College. They were Chang Chumo and the others. They had originally wanted to send Li Chengqian off on the way to the college. However, after thinking about it, it was better to come here. After all, there were many eyes in the college. If their identities were exposed, then the losses would outweigh the gains. The only thing they were worried about now was Gao Ken, the iron lump. It all depended on whether Li Chengqian had a way to deal with him. They're here. At this moment, Zhang Sunchong stood on the branch of a tall tree and looked into the distance as he spoke. Instantly, the youths were energized. There were only 5,000 people on this expedition, including Li Chengqian's bodyguards and personal guards. He didn't even bring a single servant girl. This was Li Chengqian's decision. The official road was not far from the foot of the mountain where Chang Chumo and the others were. After they watched the carriages and the soldiers leave, Zhang Sunchong hurriedly rode his horse down the mountain. Amidst the chaos, Zhang Sunchong hurriedly brought Li Chengqian to the foot of the old tree. The troops at the foot of the mountain returned to normal after the commotion. Li Chengqian dismounted and the youths gave him a bear hug. Then, they looked at the strange dark green equipment on Li Chengqian's body and clicked their tongues in wonder. Chengqian, is this the new military uniform that Fengzi came up with? Li Chengqian showed off a few strokes and said, "How is it?" The youth's eyes were red with envy. They peeled it off Li Chengqian's body, and each of them put it on. Only then did they reluctantly hand it over to Li Chengqian. At this moment, Dugo asked earnestly, "Chengqian, when did Gao Ken find out about your identity?" Hearing this, Li Chengqian's expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, "Gao Ken is not stupid. In fact, he is smarter than anyone else. When he was in the military camp, he already knew our identities. I only found out today when I was chatting with him." Hearing this, everyone was a little stunned. In their eyes, Gao Ken was undoubtedly a blockhead, but they didn't expect him to be so meticulous. Li Chengqian shook his head and said, "I think Fengzi sent him to Chotzi City with me because he values his meticulous thinking. Do you think any of the people Fengzi accepted are stupid?" Now that he said that, only then did everyone come to a realization. Since he said so, then he must be clear about our relationship with Fengzi, right? Li Chengqian nodded and said, "He said today that as long as we don't have any bad intentions towards Fengzi, he will pretend not to know. Moreover, when you guys stole from Fengzi, did you think no one would know? That kid was already watching." At this moment, they couldn't help but look at each other. This guy was an existence that could even beat up the Yuchi brothers. If he wanted to beat someone up, all of the people here would probably not be a match for him. And this time, Fengzi sent him to Chotzi. This also had a profound meaning. However, at this moment, they couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng was planning. Li Chengqian looked at the Yuchi brothers and Feng Yai and said, "That guy is waiting for you at the foot of the mountain. After all, you guys have a good relationship after fighting. Aren't you going to send him off? That guy has been waiting for you all the way." As he spoke, Li Chengqian was a little envious. However, he was more puzzled. Wasn't it just a beating? How could they have a good relationship after fighting? This made them very puzzled. Li Chengqian shook his head and said, "Since you were sending him off, did you bring wine?" "Hehe, you asked the right person. How can we not have wine?" Chang Chumo chuckled and took out a few jars of wine from under the tree behind him. However, in his astonishment, Yuchi Baolin hurried over and snatched them away. Chang Chumo was a little dumbfounded as he took out the remaining 3 jars of wine and watched Yuchi Baolin slip away on her horse again. He could only speechlessly say, "Fine. I was just saying that we could drink to our heart's content today." This kid really dared to take 4 jars of wine in one go. "Haha. Who told you to drink so much just now? Are you all right now?" Zhang Sun cursed speechlessly as he handed the wine to Li Chengqian. The few of them leaned against the tree and looked at the marching group not far away. They said with some envy, "I really envy you. You can go to Chotzi City. We don't know when Fengzi will let us out." "AI, isn't that right? My heavy cavalry, not to mention equipment, they don't even have a weapon now." "AI!" The few of them couldn't help but sigh. They didn't envy Li Chengqian, and Gao Kansas Li Chengqian shook his head and said, "You guys are thinking too simply. Fengzi's move is to stabilize Chotzi City in a short time. The reason he sent me over is to show His Majesty our strength. I was the one who solved the siege of Chang'an. That's why Fengzi decided to send me to the army for training. This is under the premise that he doesn't know our identities. He's paving the way for our future." Chapter 1678. The old elementary scholar was very comfortable. At this time, after class, he was leisurely warming his wine and reading with relish. He was also holding a cigarette in his hand and occasionally took a puff. The old elementary scholar hadn't experienced such a life for a long time. In his memory, he hadn't experienced such a feeling for at least 10 years. Only after attending White Deer College and thanks to Zhang Feng did he have everything he had today. Although there were some shortcomings, it didn't affect the overall situation. Especially at this time, with such a magical book to study every day and teach with so many students every day. Such a life was a real paradise for the old elementary scholar. However, the only thing that worried him was Zhang Feng, the silly boy. He knew about what happened today and knew about the identity of Li Shimin and the others. But after seeing that they posed no threat to Zhang Feng, he didn't say anything. But from the beginning of the incident in Chang, and until now, everything had changed silently. The old elementary scholar couldn't recognize it anymore. Especially after the phosphate fertilizer factory and the rubber factory were set up. All of this made the old elementary scholar a little fearful. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the old elementary scholar was really uneasy after seeing those murderous weapons in the workshop last time. In addition, there was a loud noise from Chang'an City last night. Although no one on the mountain heard it. After all, it was so far away, but someone talked about it. Every day, people came and went from the academy and the market at the foot of the mountain. In less than 2 hours, the news had spread on the mountain. The noise from the palace in the middle of the night was not simple. But through Old He's description, the old elementary scholar, Yu Shernan and the others couldn't help but connect it with the explosion in the workshop a few days ago. With such a thing, in an instant, everyone was horrified. But fortunately, for some reason, this matter was suppressed by the palace for the time being. Only then did everyone feel relieved. After all, this thing was ignited in their own courtyard. He couldn't blame anyone else for this. After understanding this matter, the old elementary scholar could not help but think about the future. After all, manufacturing and armaments had always been walking on the edge of a knife since ancient times. The slightest mistake could lead to eternal damnation. And the most important thing was that the students of the academy were blindly admiring Zhang Feng. Therefore, what would Zhang Feng do in the future and how he would go? That was the most important thing. After all, at this time, not only was it not very peaceful outside, there were also countless people waiting and watching Zhang Feng. If Zhang Feng were to come up with this at this time, wouldn't it mean that Zhang Feng was completely on the side of the military ministry? This would be fatal to Zhang Feng and the future of the academy. Would the Ministry of Works let Zhang Feng off the hook for all the dirty tricks he had mastered, let alone anything else? That would be truly strange. However, at this moment, with a series of knocks on the door, the old elementary scholar came to his senses. He looked and saw that the wine on the small stove in front of him was already boiling. The old elementary scholar hurriedly took down the flagon on the small stove in front of him before slowly opening the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Yu Qigong and the others outside. The old elementary scholar was stunned. However, Wei Zhang cupped his fists and said, "Brother Zihuai, I can smell the wine in your room from afar. Can I ask for a cup?" Seeing this, the old elementary scholar hurriedly invited them in and said apologetically, "This is just ordinary wine. I didn't expect you to come to my place. Please come in, quickly come in." As soon as they entered the door, Wei Zhang and the others were attracted by the old elementary scholar's flagon of wine. The old elementary scholar poured a cup of wine for each of them and asked, "Today, I wonder what you are here for." "Oh, this is what we are here for. We came here today for no other reason than to be attracted by the smell of your wine and to ask for a cup to warm our bodies." How could the old elementary scholar believe Zhang Sun Wuji's words? After all, these people wanted to drink wine, but he didn't. Besides, this kind of wine was popular now. At least in Chang'an City, almost everyone could drink it. Needless to say, these people were of high status and the wine was brewed by them at this time. How could they be short of wine? At this time, there must be something, and it must be something big. He couldn't help but ask, "Brother Sun, if you have something to say, there is no harm in saying it. We are not outsiders here. But let me say first, if it's about Fengzi, I can't make the decision." His words directly blocked their words. Zhang Sun Wuji and the others couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then he said with a smile, "Brother Zihuai, let's sit down and talk." After a few cups of wine for the old elementary scholar, Zhang Sun Wuji and the others complained about their poverty and their miserable situation. Chang Yaojin even sneezed directly. When everyone felt that it was enough, Zhang Sun Wuji changed the topic and said, "Brother Zihuai, it's going to be cold soon. At this time, we don't know where our clothes are. And the textile factory that Fengzi mentioned last time, we don't know when it will be able to produce it. So we are worried." "Hey, Brother Zihuai, it's still warm here." The old elementary scholar's eyelids couldn't help but twitch when he heard that. He hurriedly said, "Let me say first, I can't help you with this. If you want to drink wine, I have a little here. Drinking wine is easy, but other things are not necessary." Chapter 1679. Seeing the old scholar's simple and straightforward refusal. In an instant, the few of them could not remain calm. At this time, the only person who could change Zhang Feng's mind was the old scholar. Although they had thought of asking the old village chief, after much consideration, they still felt that the old scholar was more reliable. After all, they knew very well what kind of person the old village chief was. Besides the old scholar, there was actually a more suitable candidate, and that was Jing Shu. But at this time, this kid was hanging out with these two all day long, and there was no chance to say anything even if they wanted to. Only then did the old scholar come, but now, at this time, there was nothing to do. Once the old scholar refused, it meant that there was almost no possibility of these great scholars agreeing. After all, these people were all of the same breath and branch as the old scholar. At this time, the wine that they were drinking was no longer as sweet as before, especially Yuqigong. At this time, when he saw the old scholar, his face changed instantly. He hurriedly begged, "Brother Zihuai, please be magnanimous and help me. Last time, Fengzi said that he would leave the textile factory to me, and you all heard it. But today, I don't know what wrong medicine Fengzi took. He actually said, if he does this, even old man can't do anything about it. And this is a big matter that benefits the country and the people. Now the north is rapidly cooling, and as far as I know, most of the students in the academy are from the north. Think about it, if they know that their families are in such a state, will they still have the heart to stay in the academy? If this is done, it will be a big matter for the entire academy. Once the students are uneasy, the academy will be the one to suffer losses." Hearing this, the old scholar's eyebrows slightly furrowed. This matter was of great importance. If what Yuqigong and the others said was true, once the weather in the north dropped, although it would not cause widespread mourning, but it would cause the people to be uneasy. In the past, there had indeed been such a thing, but every year the mulberry and hemp crops would not be cut off, and they could almost survive the winter. But once something happened in the winter, such as a heavy snowfall, there were bound to be people who froze to death because of it. This was rarely seen in previous years, but it was not unheard of. However, this year, there was a drought in Longyu Dao followed by a locust plague. Almost all of Longyu Dao, Guanyi Dao, Shannon Dao, Jianan Dao, and other places were affected by the locust plague. Could be said that this year's winter was even worse. Although the old scholar knew that these people were singing the same tune, he still fell for it. After all, the academy was founded by Zhang Feng. In order to build up the reputation of the academy, Zhang Feng had spent a lot of effort. But now, with the development of phosphate fertilizer and military equipment, the reputation of the academy was increasing day by day. However, if something were to happen at this time, then it could be said that everything Zhang Feng had done before had gone down the drain. Thinking of this, the old scholar could not help but frown. Is this really the case? Seeing this, Yu Qigong exchanged a look with Zhang Sun Wuji and hurriedly said, "How can this be fake? Fengzi and we are all brothers, and we have even gone through life and death together. How can we harm him?" The old scholar rolled his eyes and automatically filtered out Yu Qigong's lies. This matter was stirred up by them. If not for them, how could there be such a situation? However, what Yu Qigong said was not false. They had no choice in this matter. Now that things had developed to this point, even if they did not want to do it, they had no choice. In short, at this point, there would be many chain reactions. And this was only one of the reasons why the students of the academy were in a state of panic. If this was really the case, everyone in the world would think that what the academy had said before was all empty talk. That would be fatal. Although the old scholar did not know how much Zhang Feng had boasted before, now it seemed that the old scholar could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Once Fengzi stopped and did not care about this matter, everything that the academy had done before would instantly fall apart. The academy. Everything was because of the academy. Moreover, these things were all because of these people. If it weren't for their appearance, Zhang Feng would probably still be sloppy all day long. Then, at this time, perhaps he wouldn't be involved in these things that were enough to make people cut into pieces. Thinking of this, the old scholar could not help but say, "Gentlemen, we are all old acquaintances, and there are no outsiders here. Tell me, how serious is this matter this time?" Seeing that the old scholar had finally relented, Yu Qigong said, "Well, almost all the memorials in the north are talking about supplies for the winter. And you know this year, because of the plague of locusts, almost all the mulberry, hemp, and textile industries have suffered heavy losses. And the Ministry of Military Affairs and the Ministry of Works, which had been in charge of this matter in the past, are now delaying as much as possible. There is even a temporary shortage of supplies. And you know about the emperor's situation? It wasn't strange for old Xiao to know their identities. So Yu Qigong didn't try to hide it anymore. Instead, he revealed everything about this period of time. Anyway, this was how it was. Old Xiao knew how serious the problem was better than anyone else. Therefore, it wasn't just one person's problem, but everyone's problem. If Chotzi was selfish, then the entire west gate of the Tang dynasty would be completely surrendered to the Turks. At that time, no one would have a good time, as expected. When the old elementary scholar heard this, his face instantly turned ugly. Stupid. He was completely muddle-headed. How could he forget such an important matter? Was he still the ruler of a country? He was not inferior to the ruler of a fallen country, Yangguang, was he? That person, is this how he handles things? Everything is thrown to Fengzi? Has he ever thought about Fengzi's future? Have you ever thought about why Fengzi did not agree? This matter, let's not talk about others. Even you, the ruler of a country, can't handle it and you throw it to Fengzi? Don't tell me this country belongs to him? Or does he have to do these things? Is there no one in the Tang dynasty who can do it? The old scholar said all that he wanted to say in one breath. Everything that Fengzi had done these days was still vivid in his mind. He had always wanted to stop him, but because of some things they could not get too involved. But this matter, there was only a month before the new year. Who could do anything about the military supplies of hundreds of thousands of people? But Yu Qigong and the others were right about one thing. He understood the principle that if the skin did not exist, the hair would not be attached. That was why the old scholar was so angry at this time. And Wei Zhang and the others did not look good. But although they did not look good, they still had to do it. They had thought of these things when they came to the old scholar, and they even thought of something more ruthless. At this time, seeing the old scholar's gloomy face, they relaxed. They were very straightforward. After all, they were all troublemakers in the imperial court. What kind of situation had they not seen? Wei Zheng sighed, but he leisurely lit a cigarette for old Xiaozai and said, "Brother Zihuai, this is a serious matter. Now that you have scolded and said we still have to deal with it. You see, can we trouble you?" What could old Xiaozai do? At this time, other than glaring at them, what else could he do? He had a little way to deal with it. Would Wei Zheng let him scold him like this? He would have jumped up and punished him. After thinking, the old scholar took the cigarette from Wei Zheng's hand and said, "I'll go and ask. But it's hard to say whether it will work or not. You have to wait." Chapter 1680. At the foot of the mountain. The old village chief was very happy today. Due to Nyo Weili's ruthless methods, the order in the market was maintained. Almost everyone was well behaved. Furthermore, those bailiffs no longer wore their bright and dazzling official uniforms. Instead, they obediently wore the ragged clothes that they usually only wore at home. Instead, their efficiency increased. This was all thanks to President Zhang Feng, who was on a stroll, who requested the broadcast. In an instant, the security on the mountain improved by several times. This was all because of Zhang Feng. At this time, at the fork in the road between the paper mill and the market, there was an additional pavilion that looked like a sentry post at the mountain gate. This pavilion had no other purpose except for the old village chief's daily surveillance and patrol. But at this time, inside the pavilion, it was somewhat unsightly. The pavilion was not big. It was only a little bigger than a toilet. In the middle of it was a pile of red-hot coals. Around it, the old village chief was drinking wine with Cheng Chumo and the others. At the same time, he was leaning on a wild rabbit. The old village chief laughed heartily as he talked, almost wanting to become sworn brothers with them. A few jars of wine had already gone down his stomach. The old village chief's face was gradually turning red, and he was even slurring his words. Seeing this, Du Go and the others looked at each other and bumped Cheng Chumo. Cheng Chumo then pretended to light a cigarette for the old village chief and said in a daze, "Grandpa village chief, you're already so old. How could Feng Zi be so cruel to let you come here to suffer the cold and hunger?" The old village chief was dizzy at this time. How could he know what these kids were talking about? But at this time, the old village chief was unhappy when this matter was brought up. "What are you talking about? Feng Zi's actions are the smartest of all. You have to know that at this time all of this is insignificant. After all, old man has been the deacon for decades. Although he is not proficient in other things, he is proficient in judging people's faces in the market. If not for me being busy with the paper mill last time, how could this matter have happened?" Hearing this, Cheng Chumo and the others exchanged a smile. Dugo continued to ask, "Old village head, you're talking about level. That's why this Shao Mountain Market has reached such a scale under your management. If it weren't for you, how could it become like this? But do you know that ever since the paper mill, the food factory, the phosphate fertilizer factory, the forging workshop, and the rubber factory were established, we suddenly felt that there was nothing to do. Recently, Feng Zi has also been mysterious. I don't know what he is doing. Do you know what Feng Zi is talking about?" This, the old village chief choked instantly. Ever since the last incident in the market square, although the market square was still in order, it did not restore the glory of the past. The old village chief had been in a state of guilt, so he did not care about anything and just stared at the market square. At this time, seeing the old village chief like this, Dugo toasted him again and asked with a smile, "Grandpa village head, you also know that the impact of the water wheel on the Tang dynasty is fatal. But we are also young people and also want to do something. At this time, it has been a few days and the weather is gradually getting colder. So, do you know what Feng Zi's plan is?" This? Ahem. Well, the old village chief was stumped. It was a good thing that young people could think for Feng Zi, but at this time, how could he know? Feng Zi would not tell him these things. But now that these kids were asking him, how could he say no? He could only vaguely say, "Well, I'm not sure for now, but I can tell you one thing for sure. and that is, I will go up the mountain tomorrow morning. At that time, I can help you buy it and ask. You guys are really too much. If you have any questions, why don't you ask him personally? Chang Chumo hurriedly said, Aren't we just thinking of giving Fengzi a surprise? Previously, we heard that Fengzi wanted to build a textile factory, the kind that can produce hundreds of bolts of cloth a day, so we were thinking of asking you to help us ask if you can give it to us. The old village chief was naturally aware of this matter. At this time, when he heard them say this, the old village chief instantly understood. No wonder these brats came to drink with him today. They wanted to attract business. When he thought of the money from the paper mill being divided among them, the old village chief's heart was bleeding. If it were not for Fengzi's desire to be a hands-off shopkeeper, and there was really no one on the mountain that he could use, the old village chief would not have tolerated Zhangfeng's squandering. At this time, seeing that the few of them were thinking of this textile factory, instantly, the old village chief's expression changed and he asked, What did you say? You said that it can spin hundreds of bolts of cloth a day? Seeing this, the few of them nodded. They said, That's right. Fengzi has said it more than once. So you see, without waiting for Chang Chumo and the rest to finish, the old village chief hurriedly opened the door. As he walked, he hurriedly muttered, Wait, I'll go and ask this prodigal. Why didn't he discuss such a big matter with us? Chapter 1681. At this time, the temperature in Chang and city was very pleasant. Although it was early winter, there was almost no coldness at this time. Only in the morning and at night could one feel a trace of coldness. The autumn planting had just ended. The popularity of the phosphate fertilizer matter had not dissipated yet. Although the authority of the phosphate fertilizer agent and the manufacturing authority were slowly transferred to the Ministry of Works. However, with so many people and so many demands, the Ministry of Works Agriculture Temple was almost overwhelmed. Therefore, some merchants saw the momentum and plunged into the market. Although there was no written rule that phosphate fertilizer could not be sold privately, at this time, it had just been popularized. The Ministry of Works itself had not figured out all the manpower and procedures. If they figured it out, who would know what twists and turns were involved in this? Therefore, under the instigation of Chang Chumo, Dugo, and the others, Lao Li and the other consortiums came into being. Although this Lao Li was not a despicable Lao Li, he was hired by Li Shimin to replace him. This could be considered as an explanation to everyone. There was nothing wrong with doing this. This was also the decision made by Li Shimin after thinking hard. After all, Chang and city was only so big. If the news was leaked, or if one day Zhang Feng was out of his mind and went to their house for a visit, then there would be big trouble. And this Lao Li, Lao Wei, and the others, although they were strictly selected from the palace, these people were almost all part of it. Almost everything was handled by Chang Chumo, Dugo, and the others. Therefore, at this time, they continued Zhang Feng's usual practice of looking for an agent. Of course, in this era, Zhang Feng really did not dare to use the professional term agent. He could only use some other terms. For example, the next agent. According to Zhang Feng, it was better to have fun together than alone. Therefore, Chang Chumo and the others also became hands-off managers. This time, the entire Chang and city and the businessmen around Chang and city saw a way to make money. Although the price of phosphate fertilizer was only 10 copper coins for 2 caddies, it was still a burden for the commoners. After all, no matter how little it was, every household had at least 3 to 5 mu of land. Even if it was just 1 mu of land, according to the Ministry of Works, using 5 caddies per mu of land was still an astronomical figure. But there was no other way. In order to fill their stomachs, everyone was throwing money into it. This allowed Zhang Feng and Li Shimin to earn a lot of money. At this moment, Chang was experiencing an unprecedented prosperity. There was no other way. He had already finished drawing, so he had to earn some money, right? Moreover, it was almost the end of the year. It was time to prepare some things for the new year. Therefore, the number of peddlers doing business in Chang and city suddenly increased by dozens of times. At this time, walking on the streets of Chang and city, Zhang Feng swayed and ate snacks while looking left and right. He really took a fancy to a few good things. Today, after saying goodbye to Wei Zhang and the others, Zhang Feng ran away with Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu's children. It was rare to have peace and quiet. Zhang Feng was not a god. Naturally, he also wanted to enjoy his free and unfettered life. Moreover, it was wishful thinking to make 100,000 sets of winter clothes in a month's time. Besides, there was no cotton, not to mention eiderdown or goose down. In this era, Zhang Feng was puzzled. Why was there not even cotton? However, when Zhang Feng was hit by the warm wind, he instantly understood. This might be because the temperature in this era was really as warm as spring. Although Zhang Feng had not been to Sanya in Chang, and at this time, in comparison, the temperature here was not inferior to Sanya in the future. Only then did he realize what had happened. However, at this time, Zhang Feng stopped at the stall of a woman in a pink dress that had been starched until it was white. It was mainly the things in the woman's stall that attracted the last bit. The stall was very small. It was almost a piece of linen on the ground. On the linen, there were stacks and bundles of delicate dried flowers neatly arranged. Zhang Feng squatted down and looked at the various types of dried flowers. He smiled and asked, "Madam, are these dried flowers for sale?" Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu were also attracted by the dried flowers in front of them. After all, it was not easy to preserve fresh flowers, and it was even more difficult to make them into dried flowers. As for this woman, although she was dressed very plainly, not a single hair was out of place. Especially her hair, it was even neatly combed. Seeing that Zhang Feng and the other two's actions were not ordinary, she smiled and bowed. She said, "Mister, may I ask why you're buying these flowers?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. He asked, "Don't you buy flowers because you like them? Then, this old woman will not sell them." The woman's words stunned Zhang Feng instantly. The voice here also attracted the attention of other people who were also doing business at the side. When they saw the situation, they said, "Young master, you look unfamiliar. You're probably not a local, right? This person has been selling flowers here for a few days, but she hasn't sold a single one. Do you know why?" Zhang Feng was also interested and asked, "Why?" "Because this woman has a rule. She said that only those who cherish flowers are qualified to buy them. Other than that, no one can buy from her." "Oh my God! He is Zhang Feng. He is President Zhang." In an instant, among the onlookers, someone suddenly recognized Zhang Feng. He exclaimed. As for the woman, although she was also a little surprised, she just looked at Zhang Feng a few more times. That was all. Zhang Feng gestured to the crowd and then asked, "May I ask, what is this flower? What is cherishing flowers? What is loving flowers?" Hiss! Hearing that, in an instant, all the onlookers could not help but gasp. A moment later, someone in the crowd shouted, "Young Master Zhang, you're awesome." Chapter 1682. In fact, Zhang Feng was also a little angry, but he understood a little bit of this person's idea. After all, for a person who was obsessed with a certain Tao, this thing was his lifeblood. For example, the thing that a scholar couldn't bear the most was others destroying some words, no matter whether these things were good or bad. Another example was a person who left a deep impression on Zhang Feng. Kong Yiji. This person also represented the hearts of countless people. And what he said just now was also a question to this person. The woman was also silent for a while. She squatted down and caressed the dried flowers on the ground. She said, "Young Master Zhang, I don't understand the principles you speak of, but I do know that these flowers are alive. If you really feel sorry for them, then just like how you feel sorry for the books in your academy, I feel the same way for these flowers." Jingshu's and Zhang Yuyao's eyes couldn't help but twinkle. They couldn't help but pull Zhang Feng's lapel behind his back. After giving his children a reassuring look, Zhang Feng said, "Madam, I understand what you said, but these things will only show their value in the hands of those who really need them. If you blindly appreciate their beauty, then why do you care about them? The meaning of life lies in the moment when it blooms. This is a matter of time. Just like a person, he is indeed alive, but a person's beauty doesn't lie in his moment, but in his journey of life. And this is the same for these flowers. Life should be like a summer flower. If its splendor can stun the world, they will naturally have expectations for its arrival in the coming year, and not leave it here to be turned into corpses. The corpses of flowers are publicly acknowledged and pitted. Buzz! In an instant, the whole Chang'an city fell into a dead silence. Everyone was shocked by what Zhang Feng had just said. Even in the crowd, the students and literati who asked about Zhang Feng's arrival were even more shocked. Everyone was shocked by what Zhang Feng had said at this moment. What was this? This was what they were looking for. The first thing that came out of his mouth was a famous phrase from ancient times. It was simply shocking. As for the woman who met Zhang Feng's gaze, her entire body was trembling. After a while, she said, "Young Master Zhang, you're right. I was too obsessed. These flowers, I will deal with them properly." As she spoke, Zhang Feng saw the hint of understanding and disappointment in her eyes. Jingshu couldn't help but hold the woman's hand and say, "Madam, please don't mind what he said just now. It's not wrong to love flowers. If you really want to sell these flowers, why don't you sell them to me? I'm also someone who loves this path." But the woman shook her head bitterly and said, "Madam Zhang, you're too serious. Prince Zhang's words just now really made me feel ashamed. Please don't mention this matter again." When Zhang Yuyao saw this, she anxiously glared at Zhang Feng, but she could only stop him. Zhang Feng was also helpless under the glare. He could only stop the woman and say, "Madam, don't be anxious. My words just now were indeed a little harsh. It's my fault. However, I really do like these flowers. If Madam doesn't mind, why don't we go to the tea house over there for a drink and I'll explain it to you. I think Madam won't be able to find another person who cherishes flowers as much as you do." At this moment, the passers-by were already mesmerized by what they heard. When they saw Zhang Feng and the two women say this, they all tried to persuade them. Finally, the woman carried a basket of dried flowers and followed Zhang Feng into a tea house not far away. Originally, Zhang Yuyao wanted to ask Zhang Feng what he wanted to do. One moment he was the one who talked about others, and the next moment he was the one who invited others. She couldn't help but feel a little confused. However, she was stopped by Jingshu in the end. As soon as they entered the tea house, the owner hurriedly asked everyone to make room for Zhang Feng. There was no other way. Zhang Feng's reputation was too big. Moreover, at this time Zhang Feng called people over. There must be something important to discuss. This was a living signboard. Who dared to offend Zhang Feng? They simply didn't want to live anymore. Other than leaving a few waiters to serve them, the rest of the people were all driven to the hall on the first floor. Zhang Feng and the others were invited to a private room on the second floor. Even those high-ranking officials, as well as those second-generation rich people, didn't dare to let out a fart. Who was Zhang Feng? He was a king god of slaughter. Zhang Feng was also a little depressed. However, he had no choice. He was too lazy to waste his breath on these people. Moreover, he also wanted to have some peace and quiet. After all, when he saw the dried flowers just now, he instantly thought of another way to make money. This thing was not simple. Originally, he wanted to take the two girls to Jiangnan. After parting with you last time, the people who were sent by Zhang Feng to protect you also sent some news. However, they heard that Yu's family and that so-called young master seemed to be crazily pursuing Yu. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel angry. However, he didn't dare to say it. Old Li and the others, once he told them, they would definitely cause a huge commotion. He was the one who was in the wrong in this matter. He was the one who ate the other party. This matter was still covered up until now. If they caused a commotion, he was afraid that, however, after seeing the dried flowers, Zhang Feng had an idea. Therefore, he had an idea. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng directly asked, "May I ask if Madam's family has declined?" Chapter 1683. Zhang Feng's words had undoubtedly hit the woman's sore spot. However, Zhang Feng's eyes were sharp. Although the woman was dressed very plainly, her dress was very exquisite and she loved flowers. This was not something an ordinary family would do. That was why Zhang Feng asked this question. However, at this moment, the woman's expression suddenly changed, but she forced herself to be calm and said, "Why are you asking this? Does the young master have other matters? If not, then don't tease me." Seeing this, Zhang Feng was even more certain of his guess. He said indifferently, "Madam, don't be anxious. The matter of the flowers is easy to deal with. It was inconvenient to check in that filthy place outside, so I hope Madam won't blame me. I saw that there were many peonies among Madam's flowers. These flowers are not something an ordinary family can have. That's why I asked. If I have offended you, I hope Madam won't take offense." Zhang Feng stared indifferently at the woman. After a moment, he added, "This one is willing to buy these flowers at a high price." As expected, after Zhang Feng said that he would buy them at a high price, a trace of excitement flashed through the woman's eyes. However, after a moment it was hidden again. Seeing this, Zhang Feng continued, "Madam, this one only has about 1,000 strings of silver notes on me when I left the mountain this time. If Madam thinks it's okay, you can sell it to this one. If it's not enough, I'll ask the shopkeeper for a pen and ink and write an IOU. When the time comes, you can use this IOU to go to any branch of White Deer College in Chang, and to exchange for the money you need." What kind of person does Prince Zhang think I am? The madam couldn't help but feel a little angry at this moment. In an instant, an aura that only belonged to a superior suddenly bloomed from her body. However, who were Zhang Feng and the others? This moment was enough. Zhang Yuyao widened her eyes and stared curiously at the woman. Even Jing Shu couldn't help but look at the woman and secretly size her up. The woman also felt a little regretful, but it was too late for regrets. She could only sigh helplessly and say, "Prince Zhang is indeed a genius. I admire your sharp eyes. What you said is correct. My family was once a noble family. However, due to the destruction of the Chen dynasty, we were also affected." "Chen Chao?" Zhang Feng's interest was immediately piqued. He hurriedly asked, "From what I've observed, Madam's speech is also extraordinary. Why would you sell flowers on the street? Did something happen at home? If there's an emergency, I'll definitely help if I can. There's no need to trouble Prince Zhang. I just want to ask Prince Zhang, is there a person named Xiezong in your academy?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned. There were so many people on the mountain. How could he remember them all? She could only ask, "I don't know about this for the time being. Madam, why don't you tell me this person's appearance, age, or some other title? I'll send someone up the mountain to look for him." When the woman heard this, she said, "He is very proud of himself. Since 10 years ago," puffed. 3 sounds of water sprayed out, interrupting the woman's words. Zhang Feng could not help but ask in surprise, "Madam, are you saying that Mr. Zihuai is about 70 years old?" Hearing this, the woman's eyes changed and she said, "Yes, he is. I heard about him before, so I moved my family from Jiangnan. However, after coming to Chang'an, I couldn't find him anywhere, so I just asked by chance. I wonder if Prince Zhang can introduce me to him?" At this moment, after that, he began to seriously observe the woman, especially when compared with the old Shotsai. After all, these two people were too similar. He could not help but ask, "May I ask, what is the relationship between Madam and Mr. Zihuai? If you ask Xiezong in Chang and no one will know. However, if you ask the old Shotsai, you'll probably find him long ago." "The old Shotsai?" The woman frowned slightly, but seeing the meaning in Zhang Feng's words, it seemed that there was news about him. She hurriedly said, "He used to be the most talented person in the Xie family of Chen County. After the fall of the Chen dynasty, his talent was recognized by Emperor Wen of Sui, and he was appointed as the crown prince's servant. However, because of the fall of the Sui dynasty, he disappeared in order not to bring disaster to the family. However, in the end, our Xie clan was still affected. Even though we were not exterminated, we still fell apart. Xiezong, the old elementary scholar that you spoke of, was from our bloodline. He is also my uncle." The woman poured out this piece of old history like pouring beans out of beans. Those who listened and those who spoke were incomparably sad. It was as if they were watching a drama of life. When she finished, Zhang Feng was silent. Although he was very curious about the old Shotsai's background, Zhang Feng could not help but feel pity for the old Shotsai when he heard this at this time. This stubborn old man. If Li Yuan and the emperor really wanted to deal with you, do you think you can be safe hiding in Chang'an City? After so many years. It was really. Zhang Feng sighed deeply and said, the old Xiaocai is my teacher. Leave it to me. I'll send someone to invite him down the mountain. If he doesn't come, I'll tie him up and bring him here. How about it? Chapter 1684. The Xie family. Although the woman did not say much, Zhang Feng could vaguely guess which family it was. It was the poem mentioned in Lu Yuxi's Wui Lane. Flowers bloom by the Vermilion Bird Bridge, the setting sun at the entrance of Wui Lane. In the old days, Wang Xietang's swallow flew into the common people's house. Wasn't this a description of them? Who would have thought that Zhang Feng would be able to experience the sacrifice of a dynasty in this era, as well as the process of a clan going from glory to decline? After Zhang Feng sent the waiter to deliver the letter to the old scholar on the mountain, he returned to the private room. As soon as he entered, he asked, I heard you say that the Xie family has been living in Jiangnan for a long time. Why did they suddenly move to Chang'an? But what kind of great change had happened? And they need. After the woman learned about the old scholar's whereabouts and that Zhang Feng was a disciple of the Xie sect, she felt slightly better than before. After all, a person's shadow was like the bark of a tree. Zhang Feng's reputation was well known, so when she heard Zhang Feng's question, the woman said, our success is because of the Xie family, and our failure is also because of the Xie family. When uncle left, the family was robbed by the Sui dynasty soldiers and the local people. 80% of the family property was lost and we could barely get by. But this year, because of the drought and the suppression of several merchants and aristocratic families in Jiangnan, the family was really. Therefore, some time ago, the phosphate fertilizer business caused the entire family to fall apart in an instant. I advocated using all of our family's assets to purchase the Jiangnan phosphate fertilizer. But it was because of this that the patriarch expelled our bloodline from the Xie family. We had no choice but to come and try our luck after learning about Prince Zhang and uncle's names from the students who returned from Chang'an. But our family had just bought a property outside Chang'an City, and we were really short on food. Plus, our son was seriously ill, so we had no choice but to do everything we could to treat him. Seriously ill? Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but frown slightly. But before he could say anything, Zhang Yuyao couldn't help but sit beside the woman and say, Madam, you may not know this, but the divine Dr. Sun Simiao, or Mr. Sun, is teaching in the academy right now. And our Prince Zhang is also quite. Cough, cough. Zhang Feng coughed and interrupted Zhang Yuyao. He did not dare to let her continue. This little girl was simply too much. Nothing had happened, and he had already said everything? How could this be? What if this person had some incurable disease? If he couldn't be cured, wouldn't he be smashing his own reputation? And what kind of miracle doctor was he? It was just a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Last time, if Niu Xiaohu's leg was really broken and split into two halves, he would be helpless. This time, he dared not promise others anything casually. It would really cost him his life. Madam, may I know what illness the young master has? The woman was also frightened by Zhang Yuyao's words. After all, as a former big clan, although they were driven out, they were still a big clan. She must have some information about some things. Naturally, she also knew Zhang Feng's ability. At this time, seeing this, she hurriedly explained the illness. Zhang Feng couldn't help but frown and said, according to the illness you said, it should be lung disease, but has this lung disease been diagnosed before? I found out, but the doctors told my son to avoid meat and fish, and not to be exposed to the wind. However, it has been several years and there hasn't been any improvement. There is only one male in the family, and my son is known in the family as a talent who has the potential to surpass uncle. However, his fate is full of misfortune, and I have no other choice. Moreover, my son's monthly medical expenses are simply astronomical, so The woman said it with tears in her eyes. Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao were also in tears. Seeing this, Zhang Feng felt a headache. Fu*K. If Zhang Feng saw that quack doctor, he would definitely cut him into pieces. Fu*K. Is there anyone who treats patients like you? Fu*K. You can't just care about money and ignore people's lives, right? Lung disease was mainly to clear the lungs and stop coughing. What was needed was fresh air. Moreover, this disease did not have any other requirements regarding diet. As long as one avoided spicy and stimulating food, there was no need to King abstain from eating meat. Wasn't this killing people? Zhang Feng felt a sense of cynicism inside. This illness isn't a big problem. I'll get Divine Dr. Sun to take a look at it later. Furthermore, I'll write something for you to change your living environment. Hearing this, the woman said with some doubts, Prince Zhang, what you said is true. Zhang Feng couldn't help but spread out his hands. The woman smiled apologetically, and then hurriedly pushed the dried flowers in her hand to Zhang Feng respectfully and said, To be honest, there are some at home, but as for the consultation fee, I will send the full amount later. Since Prince Zhang likes this flower, I have nothing else. Just take it as a gift for Prince Zhang to play with. Chapter 1685. A family that used to be glorious. Since when did they do this for a disease? Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Looking at the flowers in front of him, Zhang Feng asked again, How many of these things do you have in your house? If you have, I'll take them all. How much should they cost? I won't give you a penny. Prince Zhang, are you humiliating me? Before Zhang Feng could finish, the woman flatly refused Zhang Feng and said, These things are valuable, but compared to my son's life, they are nothing. This is just an ordinary perfume sachet. If you want it, there are a lot of it in the south of the Yangtze River. You can buy 1/2 kilogram of it for 1 penny. However, it is very rare in Chang'an. That's why I'm thinking about it. 1 penny for 1/2 kilogram. Sachets. Zhang Feng's eyes lit up instantly. The woman couldn't help but turn pale. Although the woman looked a little down, she couldn't hide her beauty. She was not as beautiful as Jingshu, Yu Yao, or Yu Er. However, the charm of a mature woman had long been coveted by lechers in Jiangnan. Moreover, the woman was only in her 30s. At this moment, Zhang Feng's eyes made the woman feel a little disgusted. Since her husband passed away, she could often see this kind of greedy eyes from the servants, the clan members, and the passers-by. But now, the woman couldn't help but want to cry. In the past, she would have turned around and left. However, only Zhang Feng could save her son now. How could she dare to leave? Madam, you said that this kind of dried flower is everywhere in Jiangnan? The woman patiently nodded her head in response. When Zhang Feng heard this, he immediately burst out laughing. We're rich, we're rich. Ha ha ha, Jingshu, Yu Yao, we're gonna be rich. Hearing the question marks on the 3 women's heads, the woman came to her senses at this time. Zhang Feng was not that kind of lecher. He just thought of some way to make money, so his expression eased a little. Jingshu was a little speechless as she tugged at Zhang Feng's clothes and asked, You're fine. There are outsiders here. Seeing this, Zhang Feng came to his senses and hurriedly cupped his fists at the woman. Madam, I'm sorry. I lost my composure just now. It's just that I really thought of a way to make money that I've never thought of before, so I couldn't help myself. Sorry, I couldn't help it. The woman was a little suspicious. However, she couldn't say much. After all, this was other people's business. Moreover, she knew Zhang Feng's character very well. Let's put it this way. This kind of aristocratic family cared most about making acquaintances with the local merchant families and famous people. In Chang'an City, although the woman was from the declining Xia family, she had once enjoyed a great reputation. Of course, these things were necessary lessons. It was impossible for them not to inquire about Zhang Feng's reputation in Chang'an City and its surrounding areas. At this time, the atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Zhang Feng also noticed it. He coughed and said, Madam, since you're a relative of my teacher, and you must know more about the things in Jiangnan than I do, how about this? I have a business here. Can you see if you can cooperate with me? Although the woman didn't understand what cooperation meant, she also understood that Zhang Feng did this for Xiezong's sake. Otherwise, why would he care about a declining aristocrat? However, this was also the woman's expectation. How many years had it been? The Xia family tried everything to climb up the social ladder, but no one dared to provoke the remnants of the previous dynasty. Even if they used up all the remaining financial resources of the family, In the end, because of her husband's mistake, the Xie family suffered a great disaster. At this time, she didn't expect to meet Zhang Feng by chance because of buying flowers. Not only did he solve her son's illness, but he also solved the Xie family's urgent problem. At this time, because the Xie family had moved here, they only had enough money left to plant this autumn after purchasing the land title deed. If they didn't have a chance to survive, they would probably have a difficult new year. At this time, the woman couldn't help but ask, "Prince Zhang, if you have something to say, just say it. Although my family has indeed declined, I still have some connections in Jiangnan. And if Prince Zhang really wants this kind of dried flower, then I can guarantee that I can buy you as many as you want. And the price is the most reasonable and cost-effective. It's just that the road from Jiangnan to Chang and is a little long." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "In that case, thank you very much, madam. I haven't asked for your surname. It's really my fault. May I ask for your surname?" "My surname is Xie, and my name is Chuyan. So it's Madam Xie. How about this, Madam Xie? According to the price here, I'll charge you 3 copper coins per caddy. You can take the money just now, and if it's not enough, you can get more from the account. This will be the deposit for the first batch of goods. What do you think?" Zhang Feng's wealth made Xie Chuyan's eyelids twitch uncontrollably, but she still couldn't help but ask, "Prince Zhang, to be honest, this thing is really useless. I really don't know what Prince Zhang wants this for, and why waste this money?" Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously, but just as he was about to speak, there was a cough outside the private room. Zhang Feng immediately shut up and pointed to the door. "The person you're looking for is here." Chapter 1686. Xie Chuyan looked at the door in a daze. But before she could say anything, Zhang Feng had already opened the door. When he opened the door, he found that the 2 girls were looking at him strangely. He waved his hand and asked the 2 girls to leave the room quietly. After all, this was other people's family matter. He did not have the hobby of prying into other people's family matters. Once out of the door, Jing Shu could not help but look at the dried flowers in the basket and asked, "Young master, you?" "Shu." Zhang Feng made a shushing gesture and pointed downstairs. Jing Shu immediately saw that downstairs was already crowded with people. They were all looking at him eagerly. Seeing him come out, many people were cheering. There were even some young people who were holding up their calligraphy books and shouting. Zhang Feng was too lazy to look at them. Even if he did, he would not understand. He simply pointed to the crowd downstairs and said to the 2 girls, "Do you see this? This is the current me. If I were to be as lonely as her one day, I reckon." Sigh. Zhang Feng sighed. He looked at the commotion downstairs and then looked at the sunlight shining in through the window. He could not help but say, "There are wild flowers by the Vermilion Bird Bridge, and the sun is setting at the entrance of Black Clothes Alley." In the old days, Wang Xietang's swallow flew into the ordinary people's house. Sad, lamentable. Buzz. In an instant, there was a burst of excited roars downstairs, and in this roar, it was as if someone was crazily writing a brush and ink. There were even people fighting over the brush and ink. Seeing all this, Zhang Feng felt even more upset. Looking at a female servant who was trembling with excitement, Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Are there any more private rooms?" Yes, yes, yes." The female servant was so excited that she could not complete her sentence. She just nodded her head like a chicken eating rice. Under Zhang Feng's signal, she finally reacted and hurriedly led Zhang Feng into another private room, some distance away from the old scholar and the old scholar's private room. As soon as they entered the door, Jing Shu lit a cigarette for Zhang Feng and then looked at the dried flowers in a daze. After a while, Zhang Feng said cautiously, "Don't feel bad about this little bit of money. I can only say that this money is really worth it." "What do you mean?" the 2 girls asked in confusion. Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously and said, "Don't ask about this. In short, you will understand everything when you go to Jiangnan with me. I want to make something that only women can use and give it to you." Jing Shu couldn't help asking, "What is it?" "Perfume. This thing is good stuff. It extracts the fragrance from the flowers and then smears it on the body. The fragrance will stay on the body for a few hours. So, do you like this thing? Also, the perfume made from different flowers will have different scents, and the effects will naturally be different as well. In short, we are destined to be rich. Almost all the women in this era didn't wear any makeup. And in this era, the thing that Zhang Feng couldn't stand the most was not taking a bath. They rarely took a bath. This was the thing that drove Zhang Feng crazy the most. Zhang Feng wanted to open a sauna or something in Chang'an City. This was simply too much for him, especially every time he sat in the house with Chen Tinyu and his father. It was simply too much. But this perfume was different. This thing could not only block the smell on the body, but also make people feel relaxed and happy. Once this thing was made, it would definitely be popular in the entire Tang dynasty. And the most important thing was, Zhang Feng was too embarrassed to say it. After all, the two girls were strong women. How could he say it out loud? Besides, Zhang Feng also wanted to go to Jiangnan to see Yu and experience the Jiangnan of this era. The most important thing was that he wanted to hide. 100,000 military uniforms a month. Damn it. Even if he was a god, it would be difficult, right? And Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao were not stupid. At this time, at Zhang Feng's words, the two girls instantly realized that all this was prepared for Yu. You said that all this was prepared for Yu? We still want to go to Jiangnan? Zhang Feng was instantly speechless and said vaguely, well, Jiangnan has the most of this thing and you heard it just now. So I was thinking that if I leave this matter to you, it will be twice the result with half the effort. Of course, we have to go too. After all, I haven't been to Jiangnan and I want to see the scenery there. This year, we will spend the new year in Jiangnan. I'm afraid you won't be able to escape. At this time, the old scholar's words almost made Zhang Feng choke to death. Zhang Feng hurriedly turned to look. At this time, the old scholar walked in slowly. Madame Xie greeted Zhang Feng at the door and hurried away with a red face. It seemed that something big had happened. When Zhang Feng heard this, he could not help but sigh and said, Old scholar, what are you talking about? Don't you want to go to Jiangnan to have a look? Chapter 1687. The old scholar shook his head and said, I'm not going. It's a sad place. Going there will only add to the sadness. Fengzi, I want to talk to you about something serious. When Jing Shu and Yu Yao heard this, they hurriedly got up and left quietly. Zhang Feng asked, You finished talking so quickly? The old scholar sighed and said, It's all in the past. What's there to talk about? When I have time, I'll go back and have a look. Seeing that the old scholar didn't want to talk about it, Zhang Feng quickly shut up. After all, this was his family's business. If he didn't want to talk about it, who could do anything about it? Old scholar, what did you say just now? Don't talk about the military equipment. 100,000 pieces a month. Even a god can't do that. The old scholar smiled bitterly and said, It's true. When I was on the mountain, Old Wei and the others came to me. Tai Nyo and the others also went to the village chief. Do you think that if Lao Li and the others could think of a way, they would do that? And I'm worried that this is the emperor's idea. Whether we do it or not, it's your business. I have no right to interfere, but you should know that if you don't do anything about it, everything we've done will go down the drain. What's more, once the news of the lack of winter supplies gets out, it will shake the morale of the army. And if the enemy finds out, then, you know the consequences. Zhang Feng naturally knew the consequences if he didn't handle it well. But 100,000 pieces a month? Zhang Feng wanted to go crazy just thinking about it. There was nothing. He didn't even know where Mian Mian was. What could he do? With what? With his mouth? Therefore, Zhang Feng decisively slipped away. But he didn't expect these people to be so persistent. They directly went to find the old scholar. This was going to be troublesome. Zhang Feng coughed and said, Old scholar, although I know about this, what should I do? What should I do? Although I know how to make this textile machine produce 500 bolts of cloth in a day, this thing is not the same as weaving. If you were to do something else, I would be able to pay you 100,000 yuan a month. But at this time, I can't do anything about this. I can't possibly make some paper clothes to fool others, right? Speaking of which, the old scholar didn't say anything. He just undid his belt and waved his hand. "Come and see what I'm passing on." Zhang Feng had been wondering if the old elementary scholar had gone senile, but now he understood. He hurriedly went forward to take a look. He saw the old elementary scholar pull at the inner shirt and then pull at the seam, revealing something underneath. Zhang Feng took a look. Good lord, this guy is really wearing paper clothes. This kind of paper was a bit like Xian paper, but the material was different. It was very soft, as if it was made from the bark of a tree and then pasted together with the technique of papermaking. It also had a kind of elasticity to the touch, but the traces of sweat and grease had to be removed. Zhang Feng was a little surprised and asked, "Old scholar, your clothes are really made of paper. Can this thing be worn?" The old scholar rolled his eyes. "Then what do you think people of this era wear? What do you wear in winter?" Zhang Feng immediately shut his mouth. This question really made him speechless. When he first crossed over, he really didn't pay attention to what he was wearing. But at that time it was early spring and he didn't feel that cold. Although the clothes he was wearing were a little thin, he was wearing at least 4 or 5 pieces of clothing, so he didn't feel that cold. He didn't know what people of this era wore. At this time, when he saw what the old scholar was wearing, Zhang Feng suddenly couldn't help but ask, "Could it be that they really wear clothes?" The old scholar was a little speechless. He seriously doubted how Zhang Feng had survived the winter before. He could only blame it on Zhang Feng being young, so he didn't wear these things in winter. He just patiently explained to Zhang Feng. Ordinary people basically have to endure the winter or use linen or the bark of this kind of tree to make clothes. This kind of clothes is also jokingly called paper clothes. Only those high-ranking officials or businessmen can afford to wear clothes made of palm bark. These are all in Chang'an, and the officials are here. If you go to the north, you need sheepskin or cowhide to keep out the cold. But even so, every winter in the north, there are frequent reports of people freezing to death. But this year's situation is more special. You also know that after the locust plague, basically no grass grows. Those mulberry trees and hemp trees are almost extinct. So this year's winter is really a bit difficult. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to you so painstakingly for help. The old scholar took a deep breath and stared deeply at Zhang Feng. Actually, I also want to know if you can solve this matter. Although I used to be very tired of you doing these military things, but this time, I think it is very necessary for you to solve this matter. After all, when the nest is overturned, there are no eggs intact. This is also something you said before, so I still think you should seriously consider this matter. Zhang Feng was silent. If it was someone else who said this, he would definitely refuse without thinking. But it was the old scholar who said this, so he had to carefully consider it. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, "If it was someone else, I would definitely ignore them. But since it is you who came to plead, it means that this matter is really serious to the point where I have to deal with it. Okay, then I will give it a try." Chapter 1688. Seeing that Zhang Feng had agreed, the old scholar heaved a deep sigh of relief. Just as he had said, he really did not want Zhang Feng to be involved in this matter. However, this matter had really reached the point where it had to be solved. Zhang Feng could not help but say, "Although I have agreed to this matter, there is one thing that I have to make clear to you." The old scholar smiled and said, "Don't tell me about this matter. If you want to say something, you should say it to your brothers. After all, they have also told me that no matter what request you make, as long as it can solve this matter, they will fulfill it. Don't you think that I should confirm it with you first? I still have something to do, so I will leave first. As for the rest, you can worry about it." After saying that, the old scholar decisively left the room. Zhang Feng was stunned. This was the first time he had seen the old scholar so unconcerned about this matter, because he still remembered that the old scholar had really taught him a lesson when he was experimenting with gunpowder last time. "I gave him a good lecture, and at that time he kept telling me not to do it. But now, previously, the old scholar had told him not to get involved in this matter. But now, however, Zhang Feng could also understand this matter. If it was the first step that could be solved, the old scholar would not have been so anxious to persuade him. Zhang Feng was sure that if he still did not agree to today's matter, there would be countless people who would be persuaded to persuade him. Zhang Feng did not dare to try being brainwashed again. Furthermore, it was the horrifying scene of the 4 great Confucian scholars surrounding and brainwashing him. At this time, Zhang Feng fell into his own thoughts again. These things were for him to do. The first thing that came to Zhang Feng's mind was cotton. As soon as he thought of cotton, Zhang Feng could not sit still. He hurriedly followed the crowd downstairs. Although the downstairs was already blocked at this time, seeing that Zhang Feng was coming down, no one dared to stop him. They all opened up a path for Zhang Feng to escape from the scene. As soon as he got out of the door, Zhang Feng hurriedly hired a carriage and rushed towards his courtyard. Moments later, Zhang Feng appeared in the mansion. As soon as he entered, he saw Du Ziding and the others strolling around in the courtyard with nothing to do. As soon as they saw Zhang Feng return, everyone was so busy that they rushed to greet Zhang Feng. Seeing this, Zhang Feng had an idea and said, "Old Du, hurry up and gather everyone. I have something to ask everyone." Everyone couldn't help but feel a little confused when they heard this. This was especially so when she saw Zhang Feng rushing back anxiously and gathering everyone as soon as he returned. She thought that something big had happened. Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "I have something to ask you today. What kind of clothes do you wear during winter?" Everyone was stunned at first. Then, everyone's expression became a little strange. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was speechless. He had to beckon Du Ziding to his side and asked, "Old Du, let me ask you. This is not a joke. Tell me, how do you spend the winter?" Du Ziding was completely confused. "Master, why do you ask this?" But seeing Zhang Feng's serious face, Du Ziding did not dare to be careless. She hurriedly said, "In winter, we basically wear paper clothes." Paper clothes again. These were the words he heard the most today. After taking a deep breath, Zhang Feng said, "Hurry up and get me a piece of paper clothing. Let me take a look." Du Ziding was a little confused. However, he didn't dare to say anything. He still followed Zhang Feng's instructions and hurriedly went to get a clean paper shirt and handed it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng held the clothes and looked at it carefully for a moment. The clothes were basically made of crushed bark of the red holly tree and mixed with wood and grass ash. Although it was quite soft, Zhang Feng could feel that it was definitely not sturdy. Zhang Feng didn't know if it could keep warm, but once it rained or snowed, it would definitely not be able to be worn. This was definitely not possible. If this item was in the past where there was less rain and snow, then it would still be okay. If it was in the north, then this item would basically have to be changed after wearing it once or after 2 or 3 days. At this moment, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something. Why did the army lack this item every year? This was King paper clothes. How could it not cost? That would be like seeing a ghost. But at this time, if he used something else to replace it, the best thing was cotton. But in this era, at this time, where was he going to find cotton? Zhang Feng held the clothes in the courtyard and thought hard. But at this time, he was suddenly attracted by the clusters of small white flowers in the garden. He couldn't help but walk over and take a closer look. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Who King planted cotton in the flower bed?" Chapter 1689. Cotton? Everyone was dumbfounded. What was that? Wasn't that white folded cotton? Since when was this thing called cotton? "Old master, isn't this a kind of flower unique to Longyu? What's so strange about it?" Du Ziding asked, a little confused. At the same time, he wanted to tell Zhang Feng that this thing was really not that useful. It was just a kind of flower that bloomed like snow in winter. Moreover, this kind of flower wasn't beautiful. If it wasn't for the high officials and dignitaries adding some winter flowers to their flower beds, who would use this kind of thing? It was extremely difficult to clean it up. Zhang Feng was also a little confused. Even his heart was bleeding. It was such a good thing. Mother****. What kind of prodigal was this? Such a top-notch thing to keep out the cold. But it could only stay in the flower beds? What the hell? It was really unreasonable. However, Zhang Feng also saw the hope of 100,000 armaments in an instant. He hurriedly asked, "Old Du, let me ask you, is there a lot of this thing in Chang'an and Longyu?" Du Ziding was a little confused. However, when he saw Zhang Feng's serious expression, He hurriedly said, "Old master, we have a lot of this thing. At least almost every family in Chang and city has some in the flower beds. Because this thing bloomed too quickly, coupled with the cleaning of these flower beds every year, in the end, almost all the banks of the Longsho Canal outside the city, next to Zhongnan Mountain, are connected." Damn it! Zhang Feng could not help but swear. This undoubtedly gave him a shot of confidence. He hurriedly asked, "Then let me ask you, if I want it now, how long will it take to collect more than 10,000 caddies?" This Du Zeding could not help but be dumbfounded. Although there was a lot of this thing. However, this thing was not so easy to collect. After all, this thing could only stay in the flower beds other than being made into tinder. What was wrong with old master? Zhang Feng pondered for a while. Seeing that old Du did not understand, he hurriedly waved and said, "Jia Daoren, where are you?" "Master, didn't Jia Daoren go to Jiangnan?" Du Zeding reminded him with good intentions. Zhang Feng immediately understood and hurriedly said, "Quickly go and find Chen Tiniu, Lao Li, and the others. Also, go to the Zhang residence, the Chen residence, and Niu Weili. If they ask, tell them that there is a great opportunity to make a fortune." "What did you say?" In the palace, Li Shimin was leisurely playing with Empress Zhangsun and Li Tai in the imperial garden. She had just found out that the old elementary scholar was in contact with Lang Yu, and that the old elementary scholar was actually going against Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng had also agreed to help with this batch of armaments. Therefore, Li Shimin also put aside the matter of the Xie family. After all, they were just a lonely noble family. If he wanted to, it would depend on whether he had eyes or not. This matter was insignificant to him. However, he was somewhat concerned about Zhang Feng's purchase of the dried flowers. This kid would give him a big gift from time to time, so he had to pay attention to it. But at this moment, he suddenly heard an urgent report from Yuqigong, saying that Zhang Feng had gathered all his connections in Chang'an City. This was what shocked Li Shimin. He hurriedly asked, "Did Yuqigong say anything else?" "Your Majesty, this servant heard that Prince Zhang was worried about the armaments for the winter. As soon as he returned home, he gathered all the servants and asked about the paper clothes. Then, when he saw the white folded flowers in the flower garden, his expression changed greatly, and then this matter happened." Little Gizi explained the cause and effect of the matter in detail. Li Shimin was dumbfounded when he heard this. White folded flowers. Li Shimin couldn't help but look at the flower garden not far away. Little Gizi hurriedly picked a bouquet and handed it to Li Shimin. This was the first time Li Shimin looked at the flowers seriously. The flowers were not fragrant. There was no smell at all. When he thought about how Zhang Feng had gone to buy the dried flowers in Chang'an City today, and how Zhang Feng had found this flower because of the winter clothes, he couldn't help but think about it. He couldn't figure out what was the connection between this and the flowers. Li Shimin couldn't figure it out, and Empress Zhangsun didn't know what was going on either. On the other hand, Li Tai smiled slyly and said, "Father, didn't Brother Fengzi say that he was looking for you? Won't you know if you go there? Coincidentally, I also want to take you there to broaden your horizons." Li Shimin was hesitant, but at this time, when he heard Li Tai say this, he couldn't help but smile. He touched Li Tai's head and said, "Since Qing Ke wants to go, then I'll go and take a look." Zhang Sun Wugo pursed her lips and smiled. She said, "Do you want to call father? This morning, when I went to pay my respects, retired emperor kept talking about it. I'll go. Go now. I haven't seen that little bastard for a long time. What good things is he doing now?" At this time, Li Yuan's voice sounded urgently not far away, and it was accompanied by a burst of scolding. Obviously, when Li Shimin received the news, Li Yuan also received the news. Chapter 1690. On the other side, Chen Mansion. Although the loss of Chen Wanli had a great impact on Chen Tong, after seeing Chen Xian'er's terrifying achievements on the mountain and his talent in business arithmetic, Chen Tong was amazed. Chen Tong could only sigh that God was kind to him, and that was not all. Because of Chen Wanli's matter, Zhang Feng's paper mill business was still operating according to the share when Chen Wanli was still there. Now Chen Tong was earning more. Even now, because of the business connection with White Deer College, the Chen family was almost soaring in the business world. Not to mention in Chang'an City. Could be said that because of Chen Wanli, they even had a connection with Niu Weili. Since ancient times, merchants had been the lowest profession. But once they had a relationship with the government, it was different. This was the so-called collusion between officials and merchants. But this was just a little unpleasant to hear. In this era, all merchants who wanted to do business had the shadow of a merchant behind them. Before, Qian Tong was just a small bank manager. How could he be qualified to come into contact with this? But now it was different. All of this was because of Zhang Feng. At this time, Qian Tong's business not only included the white paper business, but also the phosphate fertilizer business around Chang'an. He even had a connection with Zhang Tufu's farm. At this time, Qian Tong felt that he had lived half his life in vain. In less than a year, he had achieved a terrifying achievement that he didn't even dare to imagine. How could he not be excited? At this time, in the Qian Tong private bank, Qian Tong was checking the daily accounts when he was suddenly alarmed by a voice. On the orders of the patriarch, I invite Master Qian to the Zhang Mansion for a chat. Zhang Mansion? Qian Tong hurriedly stopped writing and looked out of the window. He saw a servant coming, but the word on the servant's clothes made Qian Tong hurriedly come out to greet him. That symbol was Zhang. That word. To be precise, in the entire Tang dynasty, who else but Zhang Feng could make his servants wear the same uniform? The servants in Zhang Feng's residence wore almost the same clothes. Almost all the men wore satin, but the color of their clothes was uniformly white. It was a world of difference from the brown clothes worn by other servants. Moreover, there was another special point about Zhang Feng's servants, that was, their clothes and trousers were almost separated. It was not like a long gown, but it was also not like a short gown. In short, the clothes of the servants in Zhang Feng's mansion were a beautiful scenery in the entire Chang'an. Once they saw the person in the robe, they would be shocked. They all knew one thing. Zhang Feng's men were here. Moreover, because of Wanli, Zhang Feng had killed people in Chang'an. At this time, when the servants of the Zhang mansion went out, almost everyone had to take a detour. They did not dare to offend him. However, Zhang Feng's servants were all very humble and did not give off the feeling of arrogance. There was even a rumor that if a servant in Zhang Feng's mansion dared to put on airs, as long as Du Ziding and Steward Du heard it, they would pack up and leave immediately without Zhang Feng's order. That was the rule. The most beautiful servants in the Zhang mansion were the maids. Each of them was wearing a skirt and a pair of light blue trousers, and a slanted opening with a row of buttons on the upper part of the clothes. Her clothes accentuated her figure vividly. Every time these maids went out, a large group of men would follow behind them. There would even be fights. There were even people from the Chang and local government waiting in Zhang Feng's mansion. Once a maid of Zhang Feng's mansion went out, they would definitely warn all the men in advance, especially the men who had improper thoughts. Zhang Feng's mansion became the cradle of the dreams of the entire Chang and city, and the slaves of the right age in the surrounding areas. More importantly, it was, in the entire mansion, there was almost no other family in the entire Chang and city. It could be said that they ate better than the young ladies of the rich families. Qian Tong thought about it in his mind and instantly cupped his hands and said, "Little brother, you said that Prince Zhang invited me?" The servant also nodded humbly before bowing to Qian Tong and saying, "Master Qian, my master has an urgent matter to attend to and I must inform Senior Niu, so I won't speak any more. I hope Master Qian can return to the house as soon as possible." How dare Qian Tong act rashly? He hurriedly cupped his hands and hurried to Zhang Feng's mansion. And at this moment, in Zhang Shan's mansion, he had also received the same news. After learning about the situation, Zhang Shan hurriedly flipped the sign of the dessert shop and closed the shop. Those who were waiting to buy desserts, as well as the little beggars who were waiting for Zhang Shan's desserts every day, were instantly in an uproar. This was the first time in more than 10 years that Isan dessert shop closed in such a hurry. Everyone looked at the man in white servant clothes and thought about what he had just said. They instantly understood what was going on. Zhang Feng. It was Zhang Feng, and from the meaning of his words, It seemed that something big had happened. Everyone's face couldn't help but change suddenly. Something big was going to happen. Chapter 1691. As people who knew Zhang Feng received the invitation one by one, they were all shocked. Then they were all shocked. Then, everyone rushed to Zhang Feng's mansion, although they didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to do. But the matter of Zhang Feng meeting the people of the Xie family in the tea house was known by everyone. They even knew the true identity of the old scholar. However, this was no longer important. What was important was what Zhang Feng wanted to do. This was the key point. After a little inquiry, everyone understood that Zhang Feng agreed to the 100,000 sets of military equipment in the army. This was the key point. In less than 2 hours, everyone hurried to Zhang Feng's mansion. But at this time, everyone looked at Zhang Feng, who was sitting in the flower garden with his butt sticking out. They were a little confused. Even Li Shimin couldn't help but want to ask, but he closed his mouth several times. "Grandpa, what is Uncle Zhang doing? Why don't he use the servants but do it himself?" Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths. The person who spoke was Li Tai. This man was amazing. Not only was he deeply liked by the emperor and empress, but he was also deeply liked by the retired emperor. So only he dared to say so at this time. Wei Zhang and others had already arrived. But, with the retired emperor and empress here, they didn't dare to say anything. They could only keep their heads down and stare at Zhang Feng. "Grandson, you have to watch carefully. This kid is a crafty person. Anything he can get must be a treasure. Just wait and see. Today will definitely be fun again." Li Yuan smiled and hugged Li Tai. He wanted to carry him up, but after a few hugs, he didn't lift him up. He was so tired that he was panting. Seeing this, Li Tai rolled his eyes and said, "Grandpa, you said it would be fun? But this uncle, why does he look like the flower thief that the maids in the house said?" Puff! Hearing this, there were already people who couldn't hold themselves back anymore. Zhang Feng also staggered. He stared at Li Tai and said, "Little guy, who taught you this? Tire, don't talk nonsense." Zhang Sun Wugo's expression also changed slightly as he scolded. Li Shimin and the others didn't care. Instead, they looked at Zhang Feng with a smile. This brat had called them over. Now, they had been here for almost half an hour, and this brat was actually playing with flowers in the flower bed. No matter who it was, they would not be able to stand it. Furthermore, this prodigal was stepping on precious flowers and plants. Moreover, this was originally a gift from Li Shimin to Li Yuan. How could anything planted in this flower bed be ordinary? However, to Zhang Feng they were like weeds. At this time, Li Shimin and the others felt that Zhang Feng was not stepping on his own things, but on their faces. It hurts. His heart ached. This prodigal, it's simply. Even Zhang Shan and Qian Tong couldn't help but have a toothache when they saw the flowers and plants under Zhang Feng's feet. Seeing Zhang Feng leave the flower bed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Feng was also excited. Seeing that Li Tai seemed to be declaring his sovereignty, Zhang Feng glared at him and said, "Little brat, you don't learn good things. If this was my academy, do you believe that I wouldn't let Tai Niu and the others beat you? They wouldn't dare." Li Tai also pouted and put his hands on his hips. "Enough, you're already so old. Why are you acting like a child?" Li Shimin felt a headache coming on and hurriedly covered Li Tai's mouth, pointing to the pile of white stacks behind Zhang Feng. "If you want white stacks, I'll find someone to get them for you. In less than an hour, your courtyard will be filled to the brim. More importantly, what are you doing with these things? Also, brat, you should know that any of these flowers under your feet can be bought for at least 1,000 stacks of white stacks. You really are a prodigal son." Zhang Feng was stunned. He couldn't help but turn around to look at the flower bed he had ruined, then at the pained expressions on everyone's faces. Speechless, he asked, "What you said is true?" Li Shimin shrugged and said, "Of course, this is not worth mentioning to you. Brat, your money can be said to be the richest outside of the imperial treasury." Zhang Feng did not refute, washing his hands and sitting next to Li Shimin, looking at the mountain of white stacks in front of him and said, "Today, I invited everyone here for this. No. Li Shimin coughed and said, "Today, did you go to see the people of the Xie family? And you even wrote a poem on the street and bought dried flowers?" Zhang Feng was a little surprised. Zhang Sun Wu Go said with a smile, "Second brother is right. Almost the whole of Chang'an knows about this. They said that for the two madams you were generous and bought dried flowers. We didn't believe it before, but now." Zhang Sun Wu Go smiled and did not say anything. How could Zhang Feng not know what she wanted to say? Zhang Feng also pretended not to hear, coughed and said, "These flowers are important to solve the problem of 100,000 sets of winter clothes." N? Chapter 1692. In an instant, everyone's face couldn't help but change. Although they all knew that Zhang Feng was fiddling with this thing at this time should be related to this matter, they really couldn't figure out how this thing was directly related to the 100,000 winter clothes. More importantly, at this time it seemed that they had no other way. Li Shimin slowly put away the smile on his face and said seriously, "Fengzi, this matter is of great importance. Lord Zhangsun may have passed on what you promised to His Majesty at this time. At this time, it's a done deal. You don't believe me?" Zhang Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Shimin. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "Lao Li, you still can't do it." In an instant, Wei Zhang and Empress Zhangxuan's faces suddenly changed. Daring to say that His Majesty couldn't do it, and in front of His Majesty really only Zhang Feng alone. Who dared to say this? Ahem, ahem. Little Gizi and Du Ziding stood aside and coughed anxiously. Wei Zhang also hurriedly winked at Zhang Feng. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. Looking at everyone's face one by one, Zhang Feng asked, "Lao Li, this. Okay, boy, let's not talk about this first. Tell me, how are you going to play? Or how are you going to turn these flowers into clothes?" As far as Old Man knows, the Crown Prince is guarding the border at this time. If this causes unrest at the border because of this, do you know what kind of crime you will bear? Li Yuan was no longer in the mood to play. After all, he also knew that this matter was of great importance, and he had to face it seriously. Moreover, this matter is of great importance. Once the temperature in the north plummets, Tulikan will go south, and this matter will be serious. Moreover, it's only a day's journey from Feng Province to Chang'an. So, don't joke about this. That's right, Fengzi. Because of this, your brother Li can't sleep at night. He's worried about this. You see, now that Qianer has gone to Chotzi, what if something happens? Madam, don't worry. I didn't say there was no way. Zhang Feng was also anxious. Seeing Zhang Sun Wugo's distressed appearance, he couldn't help but feel numb. Zhang Sun Wugo's appearance was already peerless. And now that she was crying, Zhang Feng couldn't bear it anymore. Madam Li, sister-in-law, don't worry. I have my ways. How was Zhang Sun Wugo crying? It was just a method. She knew that this kid was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. But at this time, when he called her sister-in-law, she couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng with some interest. "You called me sister-in-law?" Zhang Feng was a little confused, but he still said, "Well, let's talk about serious matters. This thing is actually called cotton. I didn't know about it before, but I saw this thing in a book called Record of the World by my respected teacher. It said that this thing is unique to the Longyu Dao. But now the Western Turks also have it, but that's not the main point. The main point is that this thing, after some simple processing, can be made into clothes. No matter how cold the winter weather is, it can make people feel as warm as spring. Moreover, you can see that this thing is very soft and elastic." Zhang Feng fiercely boasted about the cotton. For a moment, everyone was a little confused. However, what Zhang Feng said was true. This white cotton, which Zhang Feng called cotton, was really very soft. It was even softer than the ferret's fur. Coupled with the fact that Zhang Feng was excitedly introducing this thing, everyone subconsciously became excited as well. "Fengzi, this thing is so miraculous, and it can be made into a mess. It's as comfortable as being stuck in wool. If this is really so miraculous, why didn't it exist before? Really, Fengzi, if you really have a way, why did you refuse to do it at the start?" Faced with this series of questions, Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. Is it because I didn't notice this thing before? At that time, if I had known that such a good treasure would be wasted like this, I would have taken it out long ago. However, it's not too late now. Right now, I have an important task for you guys to do, and that is, buy this thing in bulk for me. Zhang Feng's words were for Zhang Shan, Qian Tong, and Niu Weili. As for Lao Li, he knew that he was more anxious than anyone else. So Zhang Feng wasn't worried about them. On the contrary, the few people who had just been called over were a little confused at this time. And after hearing so many big things in the military that they had never heard of, their jaws had already dropped to the ground. At this time, when they heard Zhang Feng say this, they were a little confused. Especially Niu Weili, he had a good eye, especially because of his identity. Before, he had some doubts about the identity of Wei Zhang and the others. At this time, seeing so many people, and the momentum that these people occasionally exuded during their conversation, he could faintly guess that they were not simple. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say this, Niu Weili hurriedly said, I'll order people to buy it, but this thing, no one has ever bought it before, and there are as many of them as there are hairs on an ox at the foot of Zhongnan Mountain. This. When Zhang Feng heard this, he raised a finger and said, I'll buy it for 5 copper coins per caddy. As for how much you want to buy it, that's your business. I'll only pay 5 copper coins. Oh. Chapter 1693. After seeing them off. At this time, only Zhang Feng, Li Shimin, and a few others were left in the courtyard. Wei Zheng's courage gradually grew. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Li Yuan slowly say, Boy, this thing can obviously be sold at a lower price. Why did you ask for such a high price from the beginning? Zhang Feng smiled faintly. Looking at the warm sunset that was about to set, they followed Zhang Feng into the room. Zhang Feng then said, This is why I called them here. Businessmen, if there are no benefits, why would they help you? Besides, this Niu Weili is the county magistrate of Chang'an. Although he has an official Weibo, he is the local snake of Chang'an. If he participates, many things will be very easy to handle. Besides, this Qian Tong has been cooperating with us for a long time, and he can run a bank in Chang'an for so long. Naturally, he has his reasons. Most importantly, he is in this business. If I don't look for him, who will I look for? If I look for you, you just wave your hand and the whole world will know. In less than 10 days, this thing will be known by the whole world. Besides, Zhang Shan, although he is a peddler, the people he contacts are the same as Qian Tong, the people at the bottom. Although we have to do this business, we also need to take things from the people and use them for the people. Moreover, the whole cotton and cotton clothes will be a trend in the future. That's why I called the 3 of them here. Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others suddenly understood. At this time, Li Tai interrupted, Boy, you say this white dye is really so good? Can anyone wear it in the future? Zhang Feng's face instantly pulled a long face. Li Shimin glared at Li Tai, and Li Tai looked innocently at Li Yuan behind him. Li Shimin instantly had no way out. Li Yuan hurriedly smoothed things over and said, A child's words carry no harm. A child's words carry no harm. Boy, why don't you say, could it be that this thing is even better than that fur? Zhang Feng thought about it and didn't know what to say. He had no choice but to turn around and call for Du Zeding and the others to come up. He took out some cotton and some silk and cotton cloth from his house and started to flick the cotton on the spot according to Zhang Feng's instructions. This cotton ball made Zhang Feng stumped. After all, he didn't know how to do this. He had only seen it once in a classic anti-Japanese war drama. So he copied it and asked the servants to tidy up the living room. With this, the eyeballs of Li Yuan and the rest all popped out. He couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng was doing. However, the fluttering cotton soon turned everyone's heads white. In the end, they couldn't take it anymore and moved to Zhang Feng's study to admire his collection of calligraphy. After a full 2 hours, Zhang Feng reimbursed Jing Shu for 3 sets of gauze curtains, and only then did he manage to make a piece of cotton the size of a bed. It was soft and elastic. Although it wasn't as good as ideal, Zhang Feng felt it was almost there. He hurriedly called the maids in the mansion and hurriedly sewed it according to Zhang Feng's request. Just when everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger, Zhang Feng walked into the study with a roughly made cotton-padded shirt and trousers. As soon as he entered the door, it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Zhang Feng's cotton-padded jacket was almost made according to the style of cotton-padded jacket and trousers of later generations. Therefore, the style was indeed a bit unimaginable for everyone at this time, but they didn't care. After all, this thing was nothing to Zhang Feng, but for everyone it was simply a miracle. It wasn't excessive at all. Just now, everyone was still looking at a pile of cotton, but in just more than 2 hours it became clothes. How could it not be shocking? Li Shimin solemnly took the cotton-padded jacket from Zhang Feng and held it in his hand to examine it carefully. The cotton-padded jacket looked very thick, at least 2 inches thick, but it was less than an inch at the stitches. It was soft to the touch, softer than wool and mink fur. It wasn't heavy in his hand. It was as light as a feather. Li Shimin was a little shocked, but he still put it on without batting an eyelid. In an instant, that soft and warm feeling filled his whole body. At this time, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, how did you do it? Why am I really so warm? And no one has ever found such a magical thing before?" Li Shimin was very excited, but he was also very upset. This white fold could be said to be a kind of useless flower that everyone in Chang loved and hated. They loved it because there were still flowers in the imperial garden from autumn to winter, but hated it because every year when this flower fell, when the wind blew, it was more frightening than the white poplar flowers. The whole house was full of this thing. But who knew that it would have such a magical effect? How else could Li Shimin not be excited? 100,000 winter clothes in a month, in the bag. This was the most important thing. At this time, everyone was also a little shocked. After all, who was Li Shimin? He was the emperor. Even if Zhang Feng made phosphate fertilizer, he wouldn't be so excited. But at this time, the emperor didn't care about the scruples and directly said, What did this mean? This meant that the pink material called cotton-padded jacket he was wearing was really effective. Chapter 1694. At this moment, everyone was staring at Li Shimin with their eyes wide open. To be precise, they were looking at the red cotton-padded jacket and trousers he was wearing. This was simply a little unimaginable. Could even be said that it was a little ridiculous. However, at this moment no one could laugh and no one dared to laugh. After all, the clothes Li Shimin was wearing at this moment could be said to be a unique existence in the world. Although everyone wanted to try on the clothes and see how magical it was. But at this moment, looking at the expression on the emperor's face, everyone almost understood half of it. This thing should not be a big problem. After all, it was made by Zhang Feng. Could Zhang Feng's products be bad? No. Fengzi, do you think this thing is really so magical? What was it? It felt as light as a cloak that was draped over his shoulders. It's just that the trousers look a little awkward. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng speechlessly. Just now, almost everyone was wearing a robe at this time, only wearing a pair of trousers inside. However, at this time, Li Shimin was in a hurry to put it on. After putting it on, he realized that the robe could be said to be tied to his body. It was incomparably awkward and strange. It was fine if Li Shimin did not say it. Once he said it, everyone's expression could not help but become strange. Zhang Feng shrugged and said, "This thing is actually designed for the military. The main purpose of this thing is to keep people warm. If it's not to keep people warm, why would I make it? I dare to bet that with such a jacket, even in the bitter cold of the North Desert, in the snowstorm, there is almost no problem. Most importantly, after wearing this thing, not only does it prevent cold and warm up, but it also does not affect movement at all. Don't you realize that this thing is as good as not wearing it? And most importantly, this thing, if you wear it with a little care, there is almost no problem wearing it for 2 to 3 years." Yuqi Gong and Chang Yaojin's faces lit up at his words. This kid was really thinking for them. Didn't this thing come out for them? If this was placed in the military 3 years, how much money would they save in 3 years? Putting everything else aside, if what Zhang Feng said was true, then no one in the army would ever die from the cold. Thinking of this, Yuqi Gong hurriedly said, "Fengzi, is what you said true or false? If it's true, then..." Seeing this, Li Shimin hurriedly interrupted Yuqi Gong and said, "I have my own decision on this matter. and this matter must be reported immediately. Old Yu, quickly report this matter to the Lord Zhongsun. As for the following matters, I will discuss it with Feng Zi. As he spoke, Li Shimin turned to look at Zhongsun Wugo and said, "Why don't you take Tyre and Lord Father for a walk in the courtyard?" How could Zhongsun Wugo not know that Li Shimin had something important to discuss with Zhang Feng? He quietly left with Li Tai. This kid had been impatient for a long time. Now that he could finally go out to play, he was extremely excited. Li Yuan naturally knew the importance of this matter and did not say anything. With his hands behind his back, he called out to Li Tai and walked outside. Although the sky had already darkened, who was Zhang Feng? At this time, the entire residence was hung with lanterns. Even the trees were full of lanterns, and the entire courtyard was as bright as day. Even Li Shimin could not bear to be so ostentatious. At this time, after everyone had left, Li Shimin reluctantly took off the cotton-padded clothes on his body. He smacked his lips and asked, "Feng Zi, do you have any other use for this thing? Or rather, what other purpose do you have for creating this thing? I don't believe that you created this thing just for the army." As he spoke, Li Shimin's eyes stared straight into Zhang Feng's eyes, wanting to see everything about Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng did not decline and shrugged, saying, "That's right. This thing is a good thing. If it is only used for the army, then it is indeed a bit of a waste. As a merchant, Lao Li, could it be that you have not thought of other ways? For example, like fine salt or other Eastern things to sell to the common people?" Li Shimin was shocked. He quickly calculated in his mind and said, "You brat, could it be that you want to use these things?" Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously and patted Li Shimin's shoulder. "Brother, let me tell you this. You have seen this thing. Although I am only giving them a profit of 5 copper coins, you have to know that once my next step is to build the textile factory, it will be mass-produced. At that time, if I put these two together, Lao Li, think about it, this will be a considerable income." Li Shimin actually knew about the textile factory, but at this time, when it came from Zhang Feng's mouth, Li Shimin still felt a little shocked. After all, a textile factory that could produce a few hundred bolts of cloth a day without many people was an existence that had never been heard of before. At this time, if this thing was put together and produced together, then Li Shimin suddenly felt that it was really possible to solve the military supplies problem in a month's time. Moreover, what Zhang Feng said was not unreasonable. In this way, not only would the problem of the common people be solved, those great scholars and the pedantic officials in the court would also have mysterious things to say. But at this time, Zhang Feng said again, "In fact, this business is nothing more than production around people. Eating, drinking, defecating, and sleeping is a necessity for people. Now, we have solved the problem of clothing and eating and drinking, but now there is only one gap, Lao Li." When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but mutter, "Don't tell me you want to open a brothel?" Zhang Feng's expression froze. He hurriedly said, "No, no, no. What are you thinking all day long? What I mean is, these cotton-padded clothes and trousers are one thing. The real use of the cotton is to make quilts, cotton-padded clothes, cotton-padded trousers, and quilts. This is the next big thing I want to do. Once this thing is completed, it will be difficult for us not to become rich. Cotton-padded clothes, trousers, and quilts are the 3 most important things in life." Chapter 1695. Li Shimin didn't know what the 3 major items were. He didn't know anything else either. There was only one thing in his mind at this moment, and that was the quilt that Zhang Feng mentioned. He had never heard of this thing before. It was used for sleeping. Now, the only thing he could think of was the bedding on the bed. At this moment, when he thought of what Zhang Feng said, he instantly understood Zhang Feng's intention. The reason why the bedding was called a bedding was because this thing was almost made of mulberry hemp and animal fur. Although it was soft, after a long time it would become furry. Before this, he didn't feel much, but now, after feeling the softness in his hand and the low price, Li Shimin was tempted. It would be a lie if he didn't feel tempted. This thing. If Zhang Feng really made it, then, Feng Zi, is what you said true? Li Shimin was a little uncertain at this moment. He asked cautiously. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "Do you think I'm a liar?" "No, no, no. I just find it a little unbelievable." Think about it, this thing can not only be made into a quilt, but it can also be made into a 4-piece bed set with our textile factory in the future. Then, it can be made into a sleeping bag for travelers. That is, sleeping bags for people who go out often. Lao Li, we're going to be rich. And I can guarantee that when this thing makes money, it can make money from fine salt and forging factories. Wait! Li Shimin quickly stopped Zhang Feng, who was about to blindly talk, and asked, "What is the sleeping bag you mentioned?" This. When Zhang Feng heard this, he immediately reacted. He thought for a moment and said, "Lao Li, aren't we now raising military equipment for the army? Let me ask you, if we can produce a thing that can make soldiers sleep directly in the snow, how much do you think we can make? How much can Lord Zhangsun give us?" Seeing that Li Shimin was about to ask again, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped Li Shimin and said, "This sleeping bag is made from a quilt made into something like a gunny sack. A thin layer of rubber is applied on the inner and outer lining of this gunny sack to create a waterproof layer and an insulating layer. This way, when you sleep, you only need to crawl into the bag. No matter how heavy the rain and snow outside, it will still be as warm as spring. Think about this thing, is it good?" Li Shimin was a little speechless. "Let's not talk about whether this thing is good or not, you have to make it first. Otherwise, what can I use to fool the court? No, I mean show it to those old things in the imperial court. Fengzi, let's talk about something more practical. How much do you intend to buy a set?" After pondering for a moment, he asked the questions. This was the biggest problem. Now, his identity was a businessman. At this time, they had not talked about money after chatting for so long. This was a little unreasonable. What if this kid remembered later, wouldn't he be exposed? Zhang Feng pondered for a moment and said, "I'm a businessman. Business is business. The cost of this set is temporarily set at 50 coins. Hiss! 50 coins? Although Li Shimin was also thinking about the price in his heart, he was also shocked by the final price that was mentioned. In his opinion, this thing, no matter what, would be at least 100 coins. But he did not expect that Zhang Feng would directly give him a 50-50 price. And most importantly, Zhang Feng's price was really too low. Seeing this, Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Do you think I'm deliberately trying to please you? Otherwise, why would such a good cotton coat only be sold at the price of a paper coat?" Li Shimin nodded subconsciously. Only then did Zhang Feng say, "To set a price, you have to sell it. And now, this thing is not only connected to the military but also to the common people. Do you think there are many people who can take out 50 copper coins to buy clothes now?" Li Shimin frowned in surprise. "According to the previous situation, almost everyone will buy." "That's right. You said that almost everyone will buy it. But if we directly raise the price to 100 coins, think about it, how many people will be able to afford it? This does not include the profit margin of the second-hand dealers. Let's put it this way, although we only have a profit of 50 coins, if the people buy it, on average, it will reach about 60 coins. What I said is what I know. Whether there are other profit chains in this, I don't know. So, Lao Li, what do you think of this price? Also, we can't afford to lose the border. Let's set the price as doing something for the military. After all, if the border is lost, the first to suffer will be us merchants." Li Shimin was a little enlightened. But at this time, he also understood why this guy was not so stingy when they were talking about the production of armaments. This was all because this guy thought further than anyone else. After all, Zhang Feng was right. Once Chocha was lost, once the Turks came in, the first to suffer would be the merchants. There was no escape. Chapter 1696. Zhang Feng's plan was good. Could be said that she had thought of it since the first time she told Zhang Feng about making weapons. But why didn't this kid say anything? Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but smile bitterly. "You had this plan from the beginning, didn't you?" Zhang Feng shrugged and threw a cigarette to Li Shimin. "I didn't. But..." As he spoke, Zhang Feng lit the cigarette from the oil lamp on the table. He took a deep breath and said, "My idea at that time was very simple. That was to take over the trade city of Chiaotzi. Once we took over the trade city of Chiaotzi, we would have an escape route in the future." Li Shimin asked in surprise, "What escape route?" Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin for a long time and said doubtfully, Lao Li, sometimes I feel that your talent in business is extremely terrifying. If you learn from me for a month or so, it won't be a problem for you to become the richest person in the world in the future. But you are a busy man. Li Shimin's expression stiffened. Under the cover of the night, he smiled and brushed it off. Zhang Feng didn't take it seriously and said to himself, Actually, merchants are ultimately not presentable. Most of the time, they are even the target of disdain by the officials and the literati. In their eyes, we merchants are just a group of people who buy low and sell high. We are just a group of people who only care about profit. Li Shimin didn't object to Zhang Feng's words. He said, You are right. Isn't that how merchants are? You think so too? Zhang Feng was a little surprised. Li Shimin knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly waved his hand. No. What I mean is, this is how it is in the eyes of many people. Scholars, farmers, businessmen, and businessmen, why is the merchant last? Why do we have to kneel when we see the officials? This is all. Zhang Feng was a little unhappy. To be honest, Zhang Feng was also a merchant at this time. He was just carrying the name of the academy on his back. However, Zhang Feng was different from a merchant at this time. Zhang Feng pointed at himself and Li Shimin and said, Look at us. The kind you are talking about is just the kind of people who set up stalls on the street. That kind of people can't be called businessmen. More or less, they are just ants. They just sell the fruits of their labor to people who need it. And the businessmen I'm talking about are people like us. You can look at the whole Tang dynasty and before that. Have you ever seen a business model like ours? This? Li Shimin's expression instantly froze. Zhang Feng was right. Before and at this time, almost all the businessmen in the Tang dynasty were family members. Even if they hired workers, they were almost all there to do odd jobs. At this time, Li Shimin recalled the operation of Zhang Feng, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and the others at this time. He couldn't help but be stunned. They were not real businessmen. If they were real businessmen, then this would be terrible. This was the business that Li Shimin created according to his own conjecture. After thinking about it casually, he instantly understood the meaning of Zhang Feng's words. Li Shimin couldn't help but be surprised and said, Do you mean that you want to start with the people of the 5 families and 7 clans? Dealing with these big families had always been Li Shimin's worry. These clans had the hegemony of the Tang dynasty's market. Even Li Shimin didn't dare to provoke them easily, such as the iron mine before. At this time, the new weapons were made, and Zhang Feng had a new toy. At this time, it was time to deal with these big families. However, Zhang Feng waved his hand speechlessly and said, No, there's no rush. It's still too early to deal with them. You have to remember what happened with the iron mine. So, before we have a complete plan, we can't move. Then why are you talking for so long? Li Shimin stared at Zhang Feng speechlessly and asked. Zhang Feng grinned and said, Don't worry. I know that it's not good for you to be under the control of the 7 families and 7 clans. They control the businessmen of the Tang dynasty. Almost all the idle businessmen can hardly survive. However, these people occupy all the places of the Tang dynasty. And the most important thing is that we have a common enemy, those big clans and powerful families. This is an opportunity. My plan is to dump all the benefits in our hands. While maximizing the benefits, we can also lead more people to fight against the 5 families and 7 clans. Even the emperor will be afraid of us by then. Hiss! Cough! 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 Li Shimin was shocked. He took a deep breath. The cigarette in his mouth lit up instantly and burned a large part. In an instant, Li Shimin coughed violently. He said, You are really crazy. Let's not talk about whether the people of the 5 families and 7 clans will know about it. Even if they don't know, you should know that many things we have now are inseparable interests with someone in the palace. Even many ministers in the imperial court have interests with us. Won't this share of interests offend all those people in the imperial court in an instant? At that time, not to mention other things, the people in the imperial court will bite us in the blink of an eye. Think twice, you must think twice before you act. Chapter 1697. Li Shimin was really afraid of Zhang Feng's craziness. This matter involved too many things. He didn't expect Zhang Feng's idea to be so crazy. But at this time, Zhang Feng didn't care about what Li Shimin said. He waved his hand and said, "Lao Li, this is the general trend. Think about it. Come, try this." While talking, Zhang Feng brought Li Shimin to the flower bed outside the study. While he was at it, he broke some sticks from the branches and handed one to Li Shimin, saying, "Why don't you try breaking it?" Li Shimin was a little confused. He didn't understand what Zhang Feng wanted to do, but he still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He took a branch and broke it easily. However, Zhang Feng broke a lot of branches. In total, there were about a dozen branches. He handed them to Li Shimin. "Lao Li, try and see if you can break it." Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng. Seeing that he didn't mean to joke, he took the branch. This time, Li Shimin couldn't break it no matter what. This time, Li Shimin was even more confused. "This is—" Zhang Feng smiled but didn't say anything. He signaled Li Shimin to return to the study again. Then he said, "Lao Li, the stick from before was us, or it could be said that it was our group. But we are facing the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the Guanlong group. Do you think we can break them?" "But don't we have a new weapon?" Li Shimin said, somewhat unconvinced. After all, he was very clear about the terror of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the Guanlong group. They were able to establish the Tang dynasty and destroy the Sui dynasty. It was inseparable from the Guanlong group. At this time, if they took them by surprise and directly mobilized troops, although it would cause the economy of the Tang dynasty to decline a little, as long as they controlled these 2 clans, they could recover in a short time. Most importantly, he was the emperor. If he couldn't control everything in the world, then what was the use? Zhang Feng also saw Li Shimin's anxiety. He couldn't help but feel that Li Shimin was able to develop his industry in the gap between the Guanlong group and the 5 surnames and 7 clans. At this time, it was not surprising that he had such an ugly expression and strong killing intent. Seeing Li Shimin's gloomy face, Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, "Lao Li, don't worry. You want to hear me out. It's not that we don't want to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 clans and the Guanlong group, but it's not the right time yet. You saw that wooden stick too. That thing is equivalent to what I said just now. Joining forces with those weak families and merchants, it seems that our profits have shrunk, but do you know what we can do with just the few of us? You should know that there are still countless businessmen under our control who can still find profitable business, such as second-hand dealers. Then we should just open our arms. Although it seems that we are earning less now, think about it. The streets of Chang and city are full of businessmen. These people, if they all buy goods from us and then pull them to other places, such as other villages and towns, then you should know that this is the maximization of profits. At that time, no matter what those people in the court do, they will make more than twice as much as they do now in less than a month. Aren't you worried about the court? Don't worry. Nothing will happen. Also, even if the Guanlong group and the 5 surnames and 7 clans make a move at this time, it will be too late. As long as our actions are fast enough, we can settle this matter before they find out the clues. By then, even if they want to stop us, it will be too late. After all, they won't be able to stop the public from gossiping. There's also Chotzi City. At present, although water transportation has been developed, it still needs to be rerouted in Luo State. It's not used by ordinary merchants, so the land route has become their main transportation hub. And Chotzi City is a place they have to pass through. When the time comes, even if the 5 surnames and 7 clans, Guanlong group, and even the emperor are dissatisfied with us, we will have our own place to push them. Half of the Tang dynasty's industries are connected to each other, and it will be our natural barrier. This is my current business model, and it is also the safest and most reliable business model. What do you think? Zhang Feng told him everything he knew and wanted to say in one breath. For a moment, Li Shimin's mouth was wide open, and he looked at Zhang Feng in shock, not knowing what to say. Zhang Feng was right. This was based on the fact that he was the real Lao Li. However, Li Shimin thought more about his relationship with Zhang Feng. This kid wanted to pave the way for them. In the past, which businessman who worked closely with the court had a good ending? Zhang Feng was not afraid. At this time, he was a viscount, a great scholar, and the chancellor of Chang and University and White Deer College. Even if he were to be in the court in the future, it would not be a big deal. But what about the others? For a moment, Li Shimin was silent. He could not help but feel guilty. However, he still asked curiously, Fengzi, you said, this is a new business model? Yes. Distribution business. Chapter 1698. In the past few days, Zhang Feng had spent most of his time in the villa. Jing Shu and Yu Yao had also gone to Zhang Feng's mansion. In the past few days, Zhang Feng's mansion had not been idle at all. The most eye-catching thing was the mountain of white cotton. No matter how much they tried to persuade Zhang Feng, he would not listen. Instead, he called it cotton. There were also all kinds of fabrics bought from Chang'an. There was also a large group of craftsmen coming in and out. The huge mansion, which was usually very quiet, had suddenly become as lively as the new year. In the backyard of Zhang Feng's mansion, all the women in the mansion, including those from Tonghui Lane, had been recruited. The entire backyard was now a vast expanse of white. If one looked down from above, they would think that it was snowing. The main job of these women was to use a gigantic bow-like object to flick away the cotton that was piled up like a mountain. Then, they would press it down and sew a layer of gauze with large holes on it. Then, they would cover it with another layer, and so on, until the thickness of the gauze reached the standard of 2 inches. Although Zhang Feng's mansion was very big, it still felt a little cramped when more than 300 people were working at the same time. Among the 4 courtyards in the east, west, south, and north, except for the east courtyard, which had always been closed to the public, the other 3 courtyards, including the front yard, the backyard, and the courtyard, were all piled up with a mountain of cotton. In the hundreds of empty rooms, the finished cotton was almost bursting out of the windows. At this time, the servants and guards in the mansion were dumbfounded when they saw the people coming in and out, and then looked at the snow-white things on top of their heads. No one knew what Zhang Feng was going to do. But the only thing was that the money in the mansion had been emptied of 10 big wooden chests. It should be known that one chest was worth 1,000 strings of cash. Master bought so many white cotton. What is he going to do? How much money is left in the mansion for him to squander like this? Sigh. Who knows? For the past 2 days, everyone outside has been crazily spreading the news that our master has lost his mind. I think that's right. Even if you give it to someone for free, no one will want it. How did it become a treasure in front of master? Who knows? Don't say any more. Housekeeper Du is here. Along with a burst of whispers, a voice rang out. Everyone hurriedly shut their mouths. Not far away, Du Ziding walked over with her hands behind her back and a head full of cotton. Seeing that they had nothing to do, Du Ziding couldn't help but scold them. However, right at this moment, suddenly, he realized that Cheng Chumo had come in a hurry with some people. As soon as he entered the house, he carried the cotton wicks that had been made in the house and walked out of the door. How could this be? Child Chen, what are you? Master said that these things were made for the military. If you take them, then... Before he could finish, Cheng Chumo pushed him aside and said, all right. These are the things that the 4 great Confucians want. Feng Zi knows about it. I'll tell him personally later. As Cheng Chumo spoke, he turned around and urged the people behind him, aren't you moving faster? When the people behind him heard this, they didn't dare to be careless. They hurriedly lowered their heads and carried the things away. In fact, the people that Cheng Chumo brought were Ma Zhou and the others. The purpose of their visit was actually not that Chu Suiliang and the others had asked them to come. It was because they were itching to know that Zhang Feng was hiding here and tinkering with so many good things. Therefore, they took advantage of the time when Zhang Feng went to the small pub to sneak into Zhang Feng's mansion. Otherwise, even if they were given 10 guts, they wouldn't dare to come and rob openly. It should be known that the guards and servants in Zhang Feng's mansion were all top experts. In addition, although there were many people in the mansion at this time, they were all close to Zhang Feng. Therefore, they had to take it easy. The most important thing was, they were following orders. They didn't want to do this. However, the retired emperor was burning the fire. who dared not to come. A few nights ago, after Li Yuan saw Zhang Feng's cotton-padded clothes, he simply forgot to eat and sleep. However, he also knew that Zhang Feng was too busy these days. Therefore, he thought of such a clever idea. He thought that he would hide comfortably on Shao Mountain and drink with the four great Confucians. Instead, he let Chang Chumo and the others be the thieves. However, Chang Chumo and the others were also afraid of Zhang Feng, this abnormal person. The most important thing was that Zhang Feng had the magical weapon that they longed for. They didn't dare to offend Zhang Feng at this time. They could only look for an opportunity to do this. After everyone hugged slowly, Chang Chumo also pretended as if nothing had happened. Under the eyes of Du Ziding and the others who were staring at him with blood-red eyes, he calmly walked away. As he walked, Chang Chumo also said, "Well, old Du, didn't Fengzi just go out? I know where he went. I'll go find him now. You do your thing. After all, this thing is very important. I don't dare to delay it." However, at this time, Chang Chumo heard a voice that he didn't want to hear the most. "Who's looking for me?" Chapter 1699. Actually, Zhang Feng was very busy. And in these 3 days, Zhang Feng was extremely busy. First, he had to settle the cotton flapping equipment. Then he had to settle the cotton gelling, as well as the cotton shaping and so on. He had to teach these people step by step. He was busy for 3 days. At this time, Zhang Feng was discussing with Niu Pai Huang on how to pour rubber on cloth. When Niu Pai Huang was about to join in this bustling and mysterious matter, he realized that Chang Chumo and the rest were actually stealing things. This time, the entire courtyard was extremely quiet. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng, then looked at Chang Chumo, Ma Zhou, and the rest. Their expressions were strange. At this time, Chang Chumo also slowly realized that everyone was strange, as well as Zhang Feng's malicious expression. His expression couldn't help but change. What a coincidence, Fengzi. Zhang Feng also didn't expect that Chen Tiniu and the rest would steal into his house. But the moment he saw him, Zhang Feng understood many things. The first thing he thought of was the old master, as well as the few people who were present that night. If not for these few masters, how would he, Du Dabing, dare to let Chang Tiniu be so crazy? What's more, he even dragged Ma Zhou and the rest along. This was simply comparable to a rebellion. I say, do you have to go to this extent? Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He wanted to beat them up, but he couldn't. If he didn't beat them up, if they all learned like this, what would happen in the future? Thus, Zhang Feng couldn't be bothered to beat them up. He waved his hand and said, "The few of you, that's enough. Just now, the old master told me. Otherwise, the guards in the courtyard would have already broken your legs. Let's go, Tiniu, the few of you enter the house. Ma Zhou, after getting the things away, the few of you quickly come back. I have something important for you to do." Chang Chumo, Du Shu, and Zhang Sun Chong looked at each other in confusion. They really didn't expect Zhang Feng to cover for them. But this also meant that Zhang Feng and the others had something big to announce. After all, this was the first time Niu Pai Huang had come to the mansion with Zhang Feng. Without saying a word, they followed Zhang Feng into the study. As soon as they entered the room, Zhang Feng asked them to quiet down. Only Niu Pai Huang was in the middle of the study, fiddling with a big iron pot. Inside the pot was a pot of rubber that had already solidified. Everyone was dumbfounded. He didn't know why Zhang Feng let Niu Pai Huang boil rubber here. But how could it be an ordinary thing if Zhang Feng valued it so much? Zhang Feng patted Chang Chumo's shoulder and said, "Tiniu, it was the old master who asked you to come, right?" Hearing that, Chang Chumo shrunk his neck and said, "How did you know? If I didn't even know this, I wouldn't be called Zhang Feng." Zhang Feng was a little speechless and spread his hands. Then he continued, "Tell me, what's going on?" Chang Chumo saw that there was nowhere to hide, so he had to brace himself and make up a story. He forcibly turned Li Yuan's curiosity into the people of the Tang dynasty and so on. Of course, Du Go, Zhang Sun, and the others couldn't be left out of this. In the continuous smooth lies of these people, Zhang Feng was fooled into a daze. However, he didn't have a trace of doubt. Instead, he was a little excited and reached out his hand and said, "Since the old master said it so arrogantly, then according to his character, He must have prepared the money for me, right? Come, 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 quickly take it out. I'm also worried about where to get the money now. This time, it was Chung Chumo and the others' turn to be dumbfounded. Chung Chumo glanced at them and saw that they were very confused. He hurriedly asked, "What money?" Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. "Isn't it the money for the order of 100,000 cotton-padded clothes from the military? Why, the old master didn't tell you about this." Chung Chumo finally understood what was going on. He hurriedly shook his head and said, No one really mentioned this. But Zhang Feng frowned a little disappointedly at first, but after Niu Pihuang's shout, Zhang Feng also let go of this matter. He grabbed Chung Chumo's hand and pointed at Niu Pihuang, saying, "Tai Niu, now I have a difficult task for you. As for other things, you can put it aside first. It's here. It's really here. I knew it. This guy, King, won't let himself be taken advantage of." Chung Chumo wanted to cry but had no tears. However, he still forced himself to ask stutteringly, "Well, tell us, as long as it's something we can do, as long as it's something the 4 great scholars ask us to do, we'll definitely do it." "Hey, look at how scared you are. Actually, this is nothing else, it's something you've done before." Zhang Feng was stunned for a moment. Then he grinned. However, when everyone saw Zhang Feng's grin, they instantly felt bad. Zhang Feng didn't care about this and said, "I don't mean anything else. You've seen it too, since this phosphate fertilizer factory was built, it seems like you've been idle. Next, I want you to work with Niu Pihuang in half a month." "Wait." Zhang Sun rushed over and looked at Niu Pihuang, who was boiling rubber with horror, saying, "Feng, you want us to boil rubber?" Chapter 1700. Making Rubber. This looked like a place on the mountain. It was even more horrible than squatting in the reflection room after making a mistake. The reflection room. As the name implied, it was used to reflect on one's mistakes. However, calling this house a house was a waste of talent. The entire house could only accommodate a small bed that was half the size of a door and a night fragrance bucket. It was only 4 feet high. Just think about it. How terrifying would it be for a person to squat in a dark room that was only 4 feet high? However, even so, everyone on the mountain thought that it was a blessing. The rubber factory on the mountain was built in the most remote part of the mountain. Usually, very few people would go there. However, most of the students were 17 or 18 years old. They liked to explore these things. However, everyone who had been to the rubber factory was forced to step back by the pungent smell of rubber and the pitch-black, stinky gutters that stretched for over a mile. The most important thing was, even the birds in the sky didn't dare to provoke the poison of this thing. The fish in the water had long died, not to mention the ones in the sky and the ones in the ground. They had all run away and died. Who would dare to go to such a terrifying place? However, at this time, Zhang Feng wanted them to go. What was this? This was a reward. They knew that Zhang Feng wouldn't let them go so easily. It turned out that this was the trap. Chung Chumo's face was like a pig's liver. He hurriedly said, "Fengzi, this matter was instigated by the old man. You know that we are the younger generation. We have to listen to whatever the old man says. We know that stealing is wrong, but you don't have to trick your brothers like this, right?" "What are you talking about?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. However, looking at the expressions on their faces, he suddenly understood. "Just this? You're scared?" Zhang Feng shook his head. Chung Chumo didn't know what Zhang Feng was thinking. He hurriedly said, "Isn't it? We saw it with our own eyes. The place where the rubber factory was located was pitch black all day long. Even the fish in the canal were all dead. The water was pitch black. There were no birds in the sky and no wild animals in the ground. We all heard that it was the poison of the rubber that had blocked the canal." Poison? Wasn't it caused by air and water pollution? How did it become like this? Zhang Feng was anxious at the current level of everyone's intelligence and understanding of these things. He waved his hand and said, "It's not about this. The textile factory should start. At present, we have enough cotton in Guanyi, Shannon, and Longyu Road. However, the fabric is not enough. If we want to make 100,000 cotton-padded clothes in a month's time, we have to think of a new way. If we start the textile factory, we can... You're talking about this. That's not a problem. You should have said it earlier. See, we're scared. Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Chang Chumo and the others came to their senses and then returned to their usual sloppy appearance. They sat in Zhang Feng's study in a disorderly manner. It seemed that Feng Zi would not allow them to do that horrible black smelly thing. That would be great. If they didn't go to that place, they would be safe. Zhang Feng didn't know what to do with this move of the few of them. After being stunned for a moment, he came to his senses. It seemed that they were afraid that he would punish them to go to the black kiln. After thinking all this, Zhang Feng suddenly had an impulse to curse. Can you think of something else in your heads? Is there anyone who shows off like you? Chang Chumo crossed his legs, wiped the sunglasses in his hand, and asked, What is showing off? Zhang Feng hurriedly surrendered. Now is not the time to talk about this. You're thinking too much. Although I've stopped today's matter for you, if you don't want me to pursue it, you have to do as I say. Now, Lao Li has personally built a textile factory outside the city. I'm going to look for you when I come back. I've discussed with Lao Li. We only need 30 water wheels as the linkage drive, and our textile factory can run. So it's the water wheels. Chang Chumo thought it was a big deal. But at this time, after hearing that Zhang Feng had discussed with Li Shimin, and the most important thing was that the emperor should still be outside the city at this time, it was a big deal. The emperor was personally presiding over the overall situation and handling the textile factory. At this time, if something went wrong, then, Feng Zi, isn't it just water wheels? You should have said it earlier. I don't want to scold you, Feng Zi. Why didn't you say it earlier? Say it earlier. Zhang Feng felt that he was going to vomit blood and die. Looking at the change in attitude of the few people, he pointed to the door, took a deep breath and said, Get out! If you can't make 30 water wheels in 10 days, you'll F***king stay in the rubber factory for a month. F***ck. Chang Chumo and the others couldn't help but wail. Then, they rushed out of Zhang Feng's house, howling like wolves and ghosts. Zhang Feng looked at the few people who came and went in a hurry. He was speechless and raised his beautiful middle finger. Chapter 1701. As soon as Chang Chumo and others left, Zhang Feng hurriedly closed the door of the study. In an instant, the whole study was filled with an indescribable smell. The smell could even be smelled from 3 feet away. It was so stinky that it made people's hair stand on end. However, it didn't matter to Zhang Feng. Instead, he squatted beside Niu Pai Huang, watching Niu Pai Huang seriously boiling the rubber with relish. Niu Pai Huang was already guilty, but at this time he couldn't think too much. After all, the matter between Zhang Feng and his brothers didn't allow him to have any improper thoughts. These were all things that he didn't want to touch. After a while, Niu Pai Huang finally finished boiling the rubber that needed to be boiled. When he turned around, he didn't know when Zhang Feng had already put on a mask. Niu Pai Huang was stunned, but still said, Director, it's done. Hearing that, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, Hurry up, get a basin of water. Niu Pai Huang was stunned. What was he going to do? However, according to Zhang Feng's request, he hurriedly went outside the study to find a basin of water. When he came in, he found that Zhang Feng had picked up a piece of cloth. After seeing him come in, Zhang Feng carefully put the cloth in the water. Niu Pai Huang didn't understand, but he didn't ask much. After he put the basin of water, Zhang Feng quickly picked up the cloth that had just been put in the rubber, and then hurriedly put it in the basin of water. All this happened in 3 breaths. Moreover, Oxhide Huang could clearly see that the cloth was made of top-grade cotton. Although one side had been covered with rubber, the other side was not damaged, but the original yellow edge was a little darker. Niu Pai Huang was confused, but he didn't dare to ask. After waiting for a while, Zhang Feng picked up the cloth. Only then did Niu Pai Huang realize that the rubber was perfectly attached to the cloth. Zhang Feng roasted the cloth on the fire, then threw it to Niu Pai Huang and said, Quickly cut off all the rubber on this cloth with a knife. Oxhide Huang was dumbfounded. He looked at Zhang Feng in a daze. Zhang Feng said, "This is something that transcends time. You have to be careful. Tomorrow morning, when you scrape off all the rubber on the cloth, I will tell you what it is." Oxhide Huang was dumbfounded, looking at Zhang Feng, who was yawning as he left, and then looking at the thick stack of cotton cloth. He couldn't help but stare, but he didn't dare to say anything. He could only sigh and hurriedly do as Zhang Feng asked. After Zhang Feng left, Chang Chumo and the others slipped back into the study. As soon as they entered, they stared at Niu Pai Huang and said, "Old Huang, what are you doing?" Niu Pai Huang shook the cloth in his hand helplessly and said, "I don't know what the dean wants to do. He just threw such a good cloth into the rubber, and then asked me to scrape off the rubber on it. Don't you know what you are doing?" Chang Chumo and the others looked at each other. No one knew what Zhang Feng wanted to do. They could only say, "You do it first. Let's wait and see." Did Feng say anything? After Niu Pai Huang recounted Zhang Feng's words in full detail, Chang Chumo and the others were also dumbfounded. They could only urge Niu Pai Huang to hurry up and do it. Intuition told them that what Zhang Feng wanted to do this time was after all somewhat inconceivable. After all, Zhang Feng wasn't an ordinary person. When you felt that something was wrong with him, it was also when he was doing something. At this time, you had to pay attention. If you didn't pay attention, he would give you a huge surprise. And at this time, what was Zhang Feng doing? At this time, he was tinkering with 100,000 armaments. He could actually do something that no one could understand at this time. What was he doing? This guy was definitely doing a huge surprise. At the thought of this, Chang Chumo's eyes rolled. He signaled Yuchi Baolin, Wei Shuyu, and the others with his eyes. They were all wily old foxes. With just a glance and a movement, they could almost understand. After they left the study, Chang Chumo said with a rare seriousness, "I think what Feng wants to do this time is definitely related to the 100,000 armaments. And you also know how important this matter is not only to the second master, but also to my family and Baolin's family. So, I think, should we tell the family about this matter? Is there a need to say this? If it weren't for the fact that you all didn't say anything, I would have gone back long ago. Alright, Tainyo, have you given those things to the second master and the old master?" Zhang Sun looked worriedly at Chang Chumo and asked. Chang Chumo gave Zhang Sun a reassuring look and said, "Don't worry. I just asked Ma Zhou and the others to send these things to Chang'an Hotel. There are specialized people there who will send them back safely. But I got some for my father." Zhang Sun rolled his eyes and said, "I knew you wouldn't be honest. Alright, remember to get some for my family. My father is getting impatient from waiting." "Me too." Du Go looked at Chang Chumo with a smile. Seeing this, Chang Chumo couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. But he still said, "Don't worry. I've sent them all. I didn't see any of you coming to help just now. Good fellow, you were all waiting for me to catch them for Feng, right? And you call yourselves brothers." Chapter 1702. Li Yuan, who was waiting on the mountain, was a little upset. Although he always wanted to come to the mountain to drink with the four great scholars, Dr. Sun, and others and reminisce about the old days, such a beautiful day was very comfortable. More importantly, it could block the mouths of those leisurely people in the imperial court. Every day, looking at a group of youthful youths, holding books in their hands, every day they were as excited as if they were injected with chicken blood. There was no need to mention how nourishing it was. But today, Li Yuan had been absent-minded instead. Although he had been cooking wine with a few people while bragging, his eyes had been staring outside the door from time to time. Who were Yu Shernan and the others? How could they not see Li Yuan's thoughts? He asked with a smile, "Old master, are you still waiting for that kid?" Who didn't know about Zhang Feng's matter? At this time, although several people were here to accompany Li Yuan, they were also waiting for Zhang Feng's news. Hearing this, Li Yuan couldn't help but smile and said, "Don't think that old man doesn't know that you are also waiting for that kid. Right? Haha, we are the same. But seriously, can that kid really make this kind of thing?" Xueji laughed. Seeing that Li Yuan didn't speak, he continued, "In fact, if this thing can really be made, it will be a real blessing for the Tang dynasty." At this time, what the Tang dynasty needs most is this kind of thing for the people's livelihood. I remember that in the past, almost every winter, there were many people in the north who were frozen to death, and almost many of the students in our academy came from poor people. If that kid really makes this thing. Shueji's eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice suddenly became calm. I think that at that time, not only will the reputation of our academy skyrocket, but this kid will also take advantage of this. This bastard kid. I have heard a lot of words denouncing him during this time. Li Yuan was slightly surprised and asked, "There are still people who dare to denounce him? I'm afraid they don't know what this kid will do, right? What can he do?" Ouyang Xiu was speechless. He spread out his hands and said, "Old master, this is your fault. Wouldn't it be better for him to stay in the academy?" He, Zhangfeng, was now an unpolished jade that needed to be carved. In addition, he was the youngest Confucian scholar. At this time, how many people and young people in the Tang dynasty were looking at him? Previously, when he embarked on the path of Junwu, the Shandong side directly spread lies to mislead the public. It's not like you don't know about this. At this time, it's great that this kid can realize his mistake and mend his ways. Therefore, I feel that this matter, whether good or bad, is a good attempt. We can also take this opportunity to shut the mouth of the Shandong side. Li Yuan narrowed his eyes. Although he had been listening to Ouyang Xiu's words that carried a bit of resentment for iron not becoming steel, his eyes had been staring at the old Shoukai. He saw that the old Shoukai hadn't said a word from beginning to end, and even the expression in his eyes hadn't changed. Li Yuan could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. Could it be? This kid, did he really do it this time? However, at this time, he also heard the dissatisfaction of the 4 Confucian scholars with his previous decision. He glanced at Ouyang Xiu lightly and said, "Although that's the case, the war in the north is urgent. In addition, Tuli Khan is covetous, as well as the plague of locusts and drought. In these few times, the old foundation of the Tang dynasty has been hollowed out. In this matter, the imperial court has no way at all. Otherwise, why would the old man beg that kid like this?" Li Yuan was right, but there was also something wrong. He cleverly bypassed the matter of him urging Zhang Feng to get the new weapons, and the people present did not dare to say anything. They just snorted angrily. If it weren't for you and those stubborn and incompetent people in the imperial court, how could you let Fengzi worry about it? You were so happy. You throw everything to this kid. Don't you think about his future? In case he goes on the wrong path or offends some people in the imperial court who can't be offended in this matter, who will take the blame for him when he becomes an official in the imperial court? Here it comes. At this time, the feminine voice of the old eunuch outside the door instantly attracted everyone's attention. A moment later, Lai Ji rushed in. When he saw so many pairs of eyes staring at him, his whole body began to tremble in an instant. This student greets the teachers, greets the vice principal. What you are holding in your hand, give it to the old man. Li Yuan did not wait for him to finish speaking and directly waved his hand. Lai Ji did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly handed a sheepskin package in his hand to Li Yuan. Yu Shernan and the others did not care about any poise. They hurriedly got up and came to Li Yuan's side. Their eyes stared at the package in Li Yuan's hand. The thing in Li Yuan's hand at this time was not anything else. It was really an auspicious sign from the heavens. If it was true, then in the future no one in the Tang dynasty would be afraid of winter. The package was very big, only the size of a person's embrace. But Li Yuan actually easily raised it with one hand. Li Yuan also could not wait. His eyes were burning as he hurriedly opened the package. When the package was opened, a red thing jumped out of the package in an instant. It instantly gave everyone a big fright. When everyone reacted, they saw a singlet made of red silk fabric slowly appear in front of everyone. Hiss! Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Looking at the thing that Li Yuan kneaded into a ball and looked incomparably soft, for words instantly popped up in everyone's mind. Auspicious sign from the heavens. Chapter 1703. Cotton-padded clothes. At this time, Yu Shernan and the others were dumbfounded. Although they had heard of this thing before, because there were also rumors of this matter on the mountain, In order to suppress this matter, they did not dare to leave the mountain at will. Today, seeing Li Yuan go up the mountain, how could they not know that this matter had taken shape? At this time, after seeing the thing in Li Yuan's hand, everyone instantly wanted to take a look. However, Li Yuan had been holding it very tightly, which made them instantly helpless. I say, old master, is this thing really the cotton-padded clothes made by Madman? Made by Saucer? Yushernan asked somewhat uncertainly. Li Yuan took a deep breath and rubbed the cotton that was softer than anything he had seen before on his face repeatedly. He nodded and said, "It can't be wrong. It can't be wrong this time. This thing was indeed made by Feng Zi. This thing is really an auspicious sign from the heavens. In the future, no one in my Tang dynasty will freeze to death." At this time, everyone was shocked. Seeing Li Yuan like this, everyone stepped forward one after another. A perfectly good piece of clothing was instantly torn and the cotton fluff was flying everywhere. This group of old men who were about to see the picture seemed to have seen a rare treasure. The perfectly good cotton-padded clothes could not wait to tear them into pieces and rub them into their cheeks. "I'm really a good thing. Why didn't anyone find out that by Saucer had such a magical effect before? How did this kid find out the magical effect of this thing? This thing was simply a pity to abandon before. Who would have thought that it would actually be such a divine thing? This is really an auspicious sign. God bless the people of my Tang dynasty." Amidst the waves of exclamations, Li Yuan pressed his hand and let everyone calm down. The significance of this thing was really too great. After all, if the price of Saucer was spread out, then the price would definitely skyrocket in an instant. This thing was only used to ignite the fire in the past. The few people here were all like the pillars of the Tang dynasty. How could they not think of it at this time? After sighing with emotion for a while, everyone could not help but worry. It was true that this thing was a good thing. But if it was really hyped up by someone, or if this matter was spread out, then the consequences. Between the old man and old man, this matter, shouldn't it be kept a secret? About the cotton, I don't think it's going to be easy to hide the matter of Easy. After all, that kid has already caused a huge commotion at the foot of the mountain. I think someone has already noticed this matter. Therefore, what we need to do is to clean up this kid's mess. Before this matter spreads, we have to gather Easy as fast as we can. Li Yuan's words became a prophecy as he stated where the biggest problem was at this time. The few of them discussed and immediately came up with a countermeasure. After all, there was an absolute problem with this matter. Even if that brat was easy to attract attention, it was impossible for everyone to believe it. The price of the white stack was controlled by the emperor. At this time, almost everyone in the court knew that the emperor was Lao Li. Therefore, who would dare to touch Zhang Feng, the god of plague? The few of them did not worry too much about this matter. The only thing they were worried about was those big clans. Once this matter was completed, the first to bear the brunt would be these big clans. This loss was not just a matter of a few goods. What they would lose was their connections. It was people. It was the market. Once the cotton products were on the market, the first to bear the brunt would be the cloth trade. Then it would be the biggest cloth trade now, Suang Satin Shop. This was the most important industry of the Zheng family in Xinjiang. This industry was not only spread throughout the Tang dynasty, but also involved several countries around the Tang dynasty. More importantly, the Zheng family bore the title of the royal family. Once it stopped, then one could imagine what kind of revenge the Zheng family would take. The Zheng family was not scary. What was scary was that the 5 families and 7 sects were connected. Once one of them was moved, then it would not only affect the Zheng family but also the entire 5 families and 7 sections. It was very likely that they would officially start a war with the 5 families and 7 sects. Therefore, the few people involved in this matter were so serious. After a while, Li Yuan waved his hand with a slight headache and said, "This matter will be handed over to Erlang and the others. They have already thought of this matter. These days, there is no news from the palace. It seems that he is moving about because of this matter. So, let's not care about this matter. By the way, Brother Zihuai, last time your family came, what happened to the business with that brat?" Why did I hear that this brat owes much to your family's help this time? In an instant, everyone looked at the old Shotsai. The old Shotsai did not know why Li Yuan would ask about this matter at this time. After pondering for a while, he said truthfully, I don't know about this matter, but I heard from my family that the brat seems to be of great use. But I can guarantee that this matter has nothing to do with the cotton-padded clothes incident this time. Really? Li Yuan looked at the old Shotsai meaningfully and asked. Chapter 1704. That was what Li Yuan would say. After all, the old scholar was once the genius of the Xie family, the pillar of the family. Li Yuan didn't need to be too straightforward to understand some things. Why would the people of the Xie family appear in Chang'an at this time? Why would the people of the Xie family run into Feng Zi so coincidentally? Why would Feng Zi get in touch with the Xie family because of some dried flowers? These were all things that Li Yuan and Li Shimin couldn't figure out. Most importantly, the Xie family used to be so terrifying that even a ruthless person like Yang Guang didn't dare to act rashly. This time, because of Feng Zi, the Xie family seemed to be showing signs of rising. How could the royal family not be worried? Especially the appearance of the cotton-padded clothes. This was something that could instantly make a small family or an insignificant person rise to be comparable to a single family of the 5 surnames and 7 clans in less than a month. In the Tang dynasty, which was surrounded by wolves, there was no room for a second giant like the 5 surnames and 7 clans to appear. At that time, it was precisely because of this that the Wang family was completely wiped out. At that time, the Xie family was too powerful and the old scholar's influence was too great. It could be said that at that time, there was the Cui family of Qinghe in the east and the Xie family of Chen County in the west. These 2 families were famous at that time. They represented the thoughts of Confucianism in the north and the south. Because the Cui family of Qinghe was an important part of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, and because the Tang dynasty was just established, it urgently needed the support of Confucianism. Therefore, the Xie family of Chen County suffered the crazy revenge of the Cui family of Qinghe. That was why the old scholar lived in seclusion in Chang'an for many years. But why didn't the Xie family come in contact with the old scholar until today? This was something that Li Yuan couldn't figure out. But at this time, the appearance of the Xie family instantly made the whole of Chang'an turbulent. Even some people in the imperial court were talking about it. He had to take it seriously. At this time, on the one hand, it was teasing, but more importantly, it was a warning. Who was the old scholar? How could he not know the Tao of this? After pondering for a while, he said, I'm not sure about this at the moment. Other than you, no one else knows about the old man's presence in Chang'an. If it's possible, it's only during the mid-autumn poetry meet that an outsider came here, so. Li Yuan chuckled and waved his hand, saying, I'm just saying, Brother Zihuai, don't think too much. Alright, this matter of the cotton-padded clothes, what do you all think? After Li Yuan resolutely investigated the matter, he avoided the topic. The old scholar couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Because of all the things that had happened, even now, he didn't dare to go home and ask what had happened. At this time, Li Yuan asked, he could not help but feel extremely puzzled about why Madame Xie came to Chang'an. It was as if all of this was orchestrated by someone else. However, he still had to go back and ask around before he could get to the bottom of it. The cotton-padded clothes are not bad, and what you said about being able to make a white fold first is also not bad, but I'm afraid that the mountain doesn't have the ability to do that. Hearing the old scholar's words, Li Yuan was stunned and asked, What do you mean? On the mountain, Tainyo and the others have mobilized all the students of the academy to do something about the textile factory. At this time, they are still in his small wooden house discussing how to do a great undertaking. We can't do anything about it. Hearing the old scholar say so, seeing the complacent and helpless smiles on the faces of Yu Shernan and the others, Li Yuan just remembered that today on the mountain, it seemed that he really didn't see a single student. So, these stinking brats are doing something about the textile factory? What is Feng Zi doing? Li Yuan couldn't help but ask with a difference. However, at this time, no one could answer him. Thinking of this, Li Yuan looked at the cotton-padded clothes in his hands that were torn out of shape. He couldn't help but feel awkward. This is difficult. I really didn't expect that this brat would have such big ambitions. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death? The old scholar finally seized the opportunity to counterattack and said lightly, "Isn't this all because of you? 100,000 sets of military equipment a month. Do you really think that Fengzi is an immortal? I actually think that Fengzi is doing the right thing by mobilizing everyone together. Although this will raise the price of the white fold, at least we can solve the military equipment problem within a month. Otherwise, even after the new year, you can forget about it. No wonder Fengzi wants to escape. Now you." Hearing the old scholar's words, Li Yuan's cheeks became a little hot. He hurriedly interrupted him and said, "Enough, Brother Zihuai. I have to go back and make arrangements first. As for the mountain, this time my family will pay for it. However, tell Tai Nyo and the other little bastards, if they dare to neglect, even their Lao Tzu can't protect them." After saying these words, Li Yuan hurriedly slipped away. Only the stunned crowd was left. Chapter 1705. In Chang'an City, it was still hard to see one's fingers clearly. However, Chang'an City had been bustling for a long time. Although the morning market had not opened yet, the east and west markets were already bustling with people. All kinds of peddlers were hawking their wares on the streets. This was especially true for the basketball courts in Tonghuifang, as well as the other basketball courts in Chang'an, where business was booming. When the basketball courts were first built, many people were dismissive of them. But gradually, because of Zhang Feng's promise, almost all the rich and powerful came out. Although basketball wasn't able to prolong one's life like Zhang Feng had said, it was still a more acceptable form of entertainment and exercise than the 5 animal frolics. Therefore, at this time, not only were the rich and powerful in Chang'an City scrambling for this thing, the ordinary people were also flocking to it, especially Zhang Feng's promise. As long as he got the first place in the basketball competition, he would be admitted to White Deer College. White Deer College. At first, no one had taken a liking to it, especially the nobles. But when paper buy, the phosphate fertilizer, and Zhang Feng's feats on the mountain came out, it was like a stroke of good fortune had fallen from the heavens. Therefore, there was such a spectacular scene at this time. In the palm-sized Chang'an City, there were more than 100 basketball courts, not including the basketball courts built by the rich and powerful families. Every basketball court had people lining up since the curfew in the morning ended. At this time, even though it had only been 2 hours, there were already countless people queuing up in front of the entrance. There was no other way. Tonghuifang was Zhang Feng's nest, and the pub was not far away. If one day Zhang Feng suddenly came back to the pub and Zhang Feng saw it, wouldn't he be able to fulfill his wish instantly? At this time, amidst the cheers, 7 or 8 young men in gorgeous clothes retreated from the basketball court, sweating profusely. In an instant, the peddlers at the side of the basketball court opened their eyes wide and started shouting with all their might. "Fermented rice wine. 2 eggs, hurry? Okay, please wait a moment." After 2 short and straightforward conversations, the money in the pockets of the youths was settled. Only then did the crowd's cries of selling their wares stop. I say, brothers, do you know what happened in the residence of the 16 princes these 2 days? As soon as they sat down, they started talking. They were all stubborn people in Chang, and so naturally they were the most informed. When the fermented rice wine soup was served, they drank it and made a fuss. Are you talking about President Zhang tinkering with the white folded paper? I believe even the night people in Chang'an know about it. Do you need to talk about it here? Young Master Gua, have you seen Tai Nyo and the others? These few brats seem to be very quiet recently. Isn't that so? It's reasonable to say that the 4 great demon kings would definitely appear since there's such a big movement in the Zhang mansion. But could it be that President Zhang did something big? They couldn't help being surprised when they heard it. One of the young men said, "A few days ago, I saw Chun Xiaoye in the Yen Lai restaurant. I heard that young Master Li of the 4 great demon kings went to the border of Chotzi. It seemed that President Zhang arranged it. After that, I rarely saw them. Could it be that the Chotzi War is about to start? No way." At this time, the crowd waiting to show their skills on the court was attracted. Among them, there were several middle-aged men in gorgeous clothes. Looking at their aura and clothes, one could see that they were not ordinary people. When the others heard this, They couldn't help but come forward and ask about it. Is there any basis for what you said? As far as I know, the Zhang mansion sent a large number of people to collect the white folded paper. Even the Chang and local government, Isan snack shop, and Qiantong money house were involved. Why do I feel that this matter is related to President Zhang's previous engagement? In an instant, only then did the crowd recall the engagement between Zhang Feng and Zhang Yuyao. In addition, the women who had been going in and out of Zhang Feng's residence in the past 2 days were mostly the more reputable women in Chang, and who knew how to sew. At this time, everything made sense now. Involuntarily, a picture flashed in their minds. That was, Zhang Feng was going to get married. Look, isn't that Miss Zhang's maid Cui? At this time, someone exclaimed. Instantly, everyone looked in the direction of the person's finger and saw Cui in emerald green clothes at the entrance of Tonghui Square. At this time, everyone was gossiping. A few young men who thought they were extraordinary hurriedly went forward and invited the confused Cui over. They asked some inexplicable questions at the same time. At this time, Cui was even more confused. She looked at the gossipy faces of the crowd timidly and said, "Where did you hear this from? Why didn't I know?" They were confused. They hurriedly asked, "Miss Cui, is this true? What has President Zhang's family been doing these days?" Cui was speechless. I don't know. If there's anything, go to the son-in-law's house and ask. I still have something to talk to County Magistrate Nyo about. Do you want to come with me?" Chapter 1706. No one dared to go to the Chang and county government. Nyo Weili was famous for being tricky, especially after he got involved with President Zhang. He cared more about Zhang Feng than his own mother, Lao Tzu. If he found out that they were gossiping here, the consequences, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. They found an excuse and hurriedly left. Today, after little Cui went out, everyone she met took the initiative to greet her. There were even people she didn't know who took the initiative to greet her. As for the questions, they were all about whether Zhang Feng was going to get married. Even Nyo Weili was asking about it in a roundabout way. This made little Cui extremely suspicious. Were these people crazy? With the son-in-law's current fame, if it was really going to be a wedding, a month ago, it would have been the talk of the town. How could it be so quiet? There was even a voice that made little Cui feel a little confused. That was, Zhang Feng was going to be promoted. Although recently, everyone in the mansion and Zhang Feng knew had been crazily collecting white stacks, it didn't seem to have anything to do with promotion, right? When little Cui returned to the mansion, she was still thinking about it. She didn't even notice that the roll in her hand that she brought back from Nyo Weili for the master was almost in Zhang Shan's mouth. "Little Cui, what are you doing?" Zhang Shan shouted. Little Cui trembled and came back to her senses. But when she came back to her senses, she trembled and the teacup on the table instantly fell to the ground and shattered. Zhang Shan's face darkened. Little Cui hurriedly said, "Master, please forgive me. I didn't do it on purpose. I just what?" Zhang Shan was in a good mood, because Zhang Feng, who was originally just a small businessman, could almost do whatever he wanted in Chang'an City. This was all thanks to his good son-in-law. Although they weren't married yet, under the woman's instigation, Yu Yao had already decided to follow Zhang Feng. Although Zhang Shan wasn't sure what Zhang Feng was up to this time, he knew that it was going to be a big deal, could even change his life. And this time he had worked with Nyo Weili to make a blank stack. He had almost thrown in all his savings. This time he was also checking the account book with Nyo Weili. Who would have thought that this damned maidservant would be like this? This was all because Yu Yao had spoiled him too much. Little Cui saw that Zhang Shan was unhappy, so she hurriedly told him the whole story. Zhang Shan was a little confused when he heard this. Marriage was something that he dreamed of, but that wasn't realistic either. After all, Zhang Feng had said that he would only get married when he became an official in the imperial court. It was still too early. However, Cui's last sentence gave him a glimmer of hope. Could it be that the emperor was really going to give that brat a promotion? After thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. After all, Zhang Feng had made so many things. If he was a normal person, he would have been promoted long ago. How could he be like Zhang Feng? Not to mention the first rank in the imperial court, he could even be promoted to a third-rank official. However, Zhang Shan was a little uncertain. After all, there were some things that he was clear about. Waving his hand, he scolded, "Don't be bewitched by those stubborn people outside. Be careful not to be fooled. If there's nothing else, just stay at home and serve Miss well. If I find out that you're gossiping with those shady people outside again, you'll have to wait for me." Little Chui'er heard this and instantly became listless as if frost had hit her. The conversation between the two was also heard by Zhang Yuyao, who had just passed by Zhang Yuyao's living room. As soon as little Chui'er went out, Zhang Yuyao hurriedly called little Chui'er into the boudoir. In the boudoir, Jingshu was leisurely playing some strange songs that Zhang Feng had taught her. When she saw the two people coming in, she was a little surprised. Zhang Yuyao asked little Chui'er to close the door. After closing the window, she said, "Little sister Jingshu, come quickly. There's something important." "What's wrong, Sister Yuyao?" "Let little Chui'er say it." Zhang Yuyao excitedly held Jingshu's hand tightly and looked at little Chui'er. After little Chui'er finished talking, Jingshu instantly felt relieved. She smiled faintly and said, "Sister, I think it's better to let nature take its course. Prince Zhang has his own plans. When Prince Zhang was buying dried flowers on the street, I faintly felt that Prince Zhang seemed to be planning to go to Jiangnan. Why do you think he's in such a hurry to get married at this time? Moreover, the matter of becoming an official is very important. If it's really going to happen, the imperial court would have already issued an imperial edict. But look, is there one?" When she said this, Zhang Yuyao's face instantly changed, because she heard an extremely sensitive matter. Jiangnan. Zhang Feng was going to Jiangnan. Jiangnan Yuyuer. Although she had tacitly agreed to this matter, she still felt a little uncomfortable when she heard it at this time. Especially at this time, Zhang Feng was fiddling with the white fold in the mansion. Although the rumors were magical, the two of them were still in the dark about what was going on. Could it be that Zhang Feng was doing all this to go to Jiangnan to see little sister Yur? Zhang Yuyao was instantly enlightened by all of this. First, he met a woman who was buying dried flowers in Chang'an. Then, Zhang Feng found out that the woman was from Jiangnan. Then, he prepared to buy a lot of dried flowers. What was the use of dried flowers? They could only add fragrance to pillows and scented sachets. What was the use of that? However, the final white stack was still a flower. Could it be that Prince Zhang Feng was doing all this to go to Jiangnan? In an instant, Zhang Yuyao couldn't sit still. She hurriedly pulled Jingshu and said, "Little sister Jingshu, let's go back quickly. I think that Prince Zhang is really going to Jiangnan." Chapter 1707. At the same time in the palace. As the morning bell rang, Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne and prepared for the morning court. "Long live the emperor." The officials bowed. Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned for everyone to rise. After the officials rose, the grand scribe stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, the Chocha army is waiting for us. We can't afford to hesitate. Your Majesty, please make a decision as soon as possible." In addition, the temperature in the north has suddenly dropped. Many soldiers have frozen to death. Your Majesty, please allocate supplies for the soldiers. After that, the grand scribe raised his head slightly and glanced at Li Shimin. However, Li Shimin remained calm as if he did not hear anything. Strange, why is the emperor ignoring the Battle of Chocha? He could not help but mutter in his heart. At that moment, a military governor walked out and bowed. "Your Majesty, Chocha is an important border of the Tang dynasty. We cannot afford to lose it. Now that the Turks and Indians are eyeing Chocha, we should take the initiative to attack and take it." After that, he secretly glanced at Li Shimin. As a general, he naturally hoped to fight a war so that he could earn merits. However, all the decision-making power was in the hands of the emperor. "Shut up." The grand scribe suddenly stood up and immediately shouted at the general, ignoring the etiquette of the court. The Tang dynasty has just stabilized and is in the period of development. The people have also just surrendered. How can you act on impulse? You only want to attack and pillage without caring about the people. The Tang dynasty can't start a war now. It's time to negotiate peace. After that, the grand scribe looked at Wei Zheng with a face of reverence. Lord Wei, what do you think? He knew that Wei Zheng was the leader of the civil officials and would usually remonstrate in court. Moreover, as long as it was Wei Zheng's remonstrance, the emperor would listen. As long as Wei Zheng was on his side, there would be no problem. However, Wei Zheng was a little strange today. He held the white jade tablet in his hand and closed his eyes tightly, as if he did not care about the court. Immediately, he felt that something was wrong. Given Wei Zheng's personality, he would have already caused a ruckus in the imperial court. Could it be? What was the secret behind this? At this moment, Overseer stood up again. Your Excellency, you should know the importance of Chotzi even if I don't tell you, right? Why are you acting on impulse? Furthermore, we are confident that we will win this time. Hearing this, the grand scribe gritted his teeth and didn't want to say anything. After all, Wei Zheng's attitude just now had explained everything. But after thinking about it, he braced himself and said, "This war is disadvantageous to our country. It is a waste of manpower and resources." A waste of manpower and resources? The overseer snorted coldly. Is war a waste of manpower and resources? Then what about not having to pay exorbitant taxes this time? As a military general, he had always been at odds with these literati. Motherf **Ker, Lao Tzu's military exploits were earned from killing on the battlefield. As for you guys, you only know how to open your mouth and brag. Well, the grand scribe was at a loss for words. Even if we don't pay exorbitant taxes, how are we going to survive the winter? That's a big problem. The overseer looked at him with disdain. You don't know about this, right? White Deer College's President Zhang is already dealing with it. What kind of joke is this? The grand scribe snorted coldly. Yesterday, I saw White Deer College's President Zhang sleeping in his residence. Hearing this, Li Shimin, who was sitting on the dragon throne, couldn't remain calm. Sleeping in his residence? Was this brat dealing with the cotton clothes? Sleeping in his residence at such a crucial time? Thinking of this, he glanced at the grand scribe and asked, "Tell me in detail, what's going on in Zhang Feng's residence?" "Your Majesty, according to what I know, Zhang Feng is sleeping in his residence every day. He didn't prepare any winter supplies." Just as he finished speaking, Li Shimin's expression changed and he looked at Yu Qigong beside him. Because this matter was handed over to him, Watanabe, the Ministry of Works, and the Western Agriculture Temple. But now it had become like this. Moreover, he hadn't told him what had happened. Being glanced at by Li Shimin like this, Yu Qigong subconsciously trembled. He muttered to himself, "Oh no!" He hurriedly stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the winter supplies have always been prepared by Zhang Feng. Recently, he hasn't been at the academy, but at the Zhang residence. The white stacks in his residence are the winter supplies. Everything is going according to plan, and there are no problems." Li Shimin frowned slightly. He didn't know what was going on. However, he still believed Yu Qigong's words. "Forget it, I'll just have to take a look after the morning assembly." The morning assembly ended quickly. Li Shimin came to the imperial study with a gloomy face. He sat upright on the dragon throne and didn't say anything. Obviously, he was waiting for someone. Not long after, a head popped out from outside the door. It was Yu Qigong. Li Shimin glanced at him, stood up abruptly, and waved his hand. "Leave the palace." On the other side, in Zhang Feng's residence, Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao finally arrived in a palanquin. After getting off the palanquin, the two girls lifted their skirts and rushed into the residence. As soon as they entered the residence, the two girls were shocked by the scene in the residence. White stacks. The courtyard was full of white stacks. There was almost no place to walk. Not only that, all the flowers and plants in the front yard had died. To be precise, they were trampled to death. The furniture that had been placed there had long disappeared. There were also many servants who were recording something with account books in their hands. At this moment, Zhang Feng was teaching the servants and maids what to do. At first glance, it looked like clothes. However, the clothes looked a little strange. The two girls couldn't tell exactly how strange it was.